Her small study was a sanctuary amid the wild chaos, a place lined with shelves of dried petals, pressed leaves, and ancient texts, where the scent of earth and rain lingered like a whispered secret. Today, however, the sanctity of her space was disrupted by a small, unexpected parcel wrapped carefully in time-worn cloth. It arrived without sender or note, carried by a silent courier who vanished as mysteriously as he had come. Alina's fingers trembled slightly as she peeled back the layers of fabric, revealing a flower unlike any she had ever seen. Its petals were an iridescent swirl of deep purples and blues, veined with silver that shimmered under the flickering light of her oil lamp. The bloom pulsed faintly, as though breathing a living heartbeat trapped in floral form. She leaned closer, her green eyes reflecting the subtle glow, feeling a curious mix of fascination and unease. "What are you?" she whispered. Outside, the jungle's symphony hummed a chorus of insects, distant calls of wild birds, and the rustle of leaves stirred by the humid breeze. Yet, within her study, time seemed to slow, the flower's stillness at odds with the vibrant life around her. Alina had always been a botanist with a passion for the mysteries of flora, but this was different. This flower was not merely a plant. It was a vessel of something ancient and powerful. Her mind raced with questions, a scientist's skepticism warring with the eerie sensation that the flower was more than it seemed. Days passed as she studied the bloom, documenting its strange properties. It resisted decay, radiated warmth, and occasionally, when moonlight touched its petals, emitted soft, indistinct whispers, fragments of voices, memories perhaps, that dissolved into the night air before she could grasp them. Her research led her to the bustling markets of the empire, where memories were traded like precious jewels. Alina wandered through stalls filled with glowing orbs and bottled emotions, witnessing how the people bartered their pasts for power, wealth, or reprieve. The market was a kaleidoscope of colors and sound chants from memory dealers, the sharp scent of crushed herbs, and the tense glances of those desperate to forget or remember. It was here she met Morrow, her childhood friend and steady companion through the jungle's labyrinthine politics. His sun-kissed skin and steady gaze were a comfort amid the market's chaos. He eyed the flower with a mix of awe and worry. "Alina," he said quietly, "that flower isn't just rare, it's dangerous. The Empire's memory traders would kill for something like that. You must be careful." His warning echoed in her mind as she returned to her study. The flower's glow had deepened, petals unfurling slowly, revealing intricate patterns that seemed to shift and writhe like living ink. Each petal carried a faint echo, a fragment of a life long ended but not forgotten. That night, as Alina drifted into restless sleep, the whispers grew louder. Dreams wrapped around her like vines, drawing her into a world where memories and reality intertwined. Faces emerged, regal yet terrifying, filled with both majesty and menace. A forgotten king, once tyrant, now trapped within the flower's fragile form, reached out to her across the veil of time. Alina awoke with a start, heart pounding. The journey she had unwittingly begun was only just unfolding. In the jungle empire, where memory was currency and the past a battleground, the petals of the forgotten king had opened and with them a story that would change everything. But what price would she pay to uncover the truth? The flower pulsed softly on her desk, silent yet alive, as the jungle whispered around her, watching, waiting. And so began Alina Tar's descent into the tangled roots of memory, power, and destiny. The flower rested on the carved wooden table before her, its petals closed tightly like the secret it guarded. She had first touched it only a day ago, wrapped in fragile brown paper, its presence already unsettling the quiet rhythm of her life. The air was heavy with the scent of moss and damp earth, but there was another scent now, subtle and stranger, mingling of sweetness and something sharp, like metal and smoke. Alina inhaled slowly, her green eyes narrowing as a faint murmur seemed to curl around the edges of her hearing. She told herself it was the jungle's evening chorus, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of unseen creatures. Yet, beneath that rational thought, a whisper threaded through her mind, soft and elusive. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached out to brush the velvety petals. A chill ran down her spine, sudden and sharp, as if the flower exhaled a breath meant only for her. The whispers grew clearer, not spoken words, but impressions, fragments of anger, power, regret. The image of a man's eyes flashed behind her lids, dark and piercing, commanding yet haunted. Alina pulled back sharply, heart pounding, blinking into the deepening dusk. Alina, a familiar voice, broke through the haze. She turned to see Morrow stepping into the clearing, his stocky frame silhouetted against the jungle's dense greenery. His eyes held a fierce urgency as he approached, the carved wooden talisman hanging from his neck, catching the last rays of light. "You shouldn't be alone with that flower," he said, voice low but firm. "There are things in this empire that don't want that bloom to be understood, and those things are dangerous." Alina swallowed her unease and forced a smile. "I'm just studying it, Morrow. It's fascinating, like nothing I've ever seen. But lately, I've felt strange. Whispers, memories maybe." Morrow's brow furrowed. "The flower you have, it's not just a plant. It holds more than scent and color. It holds history, painful history, and power that can consume you if you're not careful." The weight of his words settled heavily on her. She had always trusted Morrow's instincts. He knew the undercurrents of the Empire's memory trade better than anyone. They walked together through the market's winding paths, the air thick with the hum of negotiation, the exchange of memories so vivid they could almost be touched. Traders bartered fragments of childhood joy, bitter love, and bitter regrets as currency, their eyes darting warily. Alina's gaze drifted to a group of shadowy figures watching them from a distance, their interest unmistakable. Doran, she realized, with a pang, a ruthless memory trader rumored to stop at nothing for profit and power. Morrow's grip on her arm tightened briefly in silent warning. Back in her small home, Alina pored over ancient scrolls and brittle parchment in the village archive, the flickering oil lamp casting dancing shadows. She traced the flower's lineage through faded botanical records and whispered legends. The flower, she discovered, was said to bloom only where the blood of kings once spilled, a vessel for memories too dark and potent to be forgotten. Images flickered unbidden in her mind, visions of battlefields strewn with petals, a crown shattered beneath thorned vines, a voice promising unity through fear. Alina's scientific mind wrestled with these ghostly intrusions, torn between skepticism and the undeniable pull of the flower's power. That night, under a canopy of glowing bioluminescent leaves, she met Morrow again. The jungle breathed around them, alive with the soft hum of insects and the distant call of nocturnal creatures. The flower pulsed faintly inside her satchel, a heartbeat syncing with her own. "You must decide, Alina," Morrow said quietly. "This is more than curiosity now. The Empire's future might depend on what you choose to do with that flower." Alina met his gaze, the weight of her discovery pressing upon her. The whispers in the bloom were growing louder, and the line between her own memories and those entwined in the petals was beginning to blur. She knew the journey ahead would challenge everything she believed about memory, power, and identity. As the jungle night deepened, Alina allowed herself one last glance at the flower, fragile bloom holding a forgotten king's soul, waiting to unfold its secrets. And somewhere, in the shifting shadows between dream and waking, the tyrant's whisper grew stronger, calling her into a world where past and present entwined in petals of power. Alina moved carefully through the narrow paths leading to the Empire's ancient archives, a place few dared to visit without cause. The air here was thick with the scent of aged parchment, damp earth, and a faint trace of floral incense that seemed to linger from long-forgotten rituals. As she pushed open the heavy wooden doors, a rush of cooler air greeted her, carrying with it the weight of countless memories stored in fragile scrolls, brittle books, and carved wooden tablets. Dust motes danced lazily in the streaks of light that pierced the gloom, revealing rows of shelves crammed tightly together, their contents whispering secrets from eras past. Alina's fingers brushed gently over the spine of a leather-bound volume, its surface cracked and worn by time. She had come searching for any record of King Velen, the tyrant whose soul now haunted the mystical flower in her care. Yet, as she delved deeper into the archives, it became clear that the Empire's history was fragmented, fractured by deliberate erasures and forgotten tales. Her eyes caught sight of a faded mural at the far end of the room, partially obscured by creeping vines that had found their way inside. The mural depicted a towering figure crowned with petals and thorns, his features both regal and terrifying. Around him, scenes of conquest and subjugation unfolded. Armies clashed beneath blood-red skies. Villages burned, and faces showed anguish and defiance in equal measure. Yet, delicate floral motifs wove through the violence, binding the king's image to the natural world in a strange, uneasy harmony. Alina's breath caught. This was not the sanitized legend she had heard as a child. It was raw, brutal, and hauntingly beautiful. The flower she had inherited was more than a relic. It was a living vessel of memory and pain. Her thoughts churned as she left the archives and made her way to Sari's hut on the edge of the village. The elder's home was a sanctuary of earth and time, filled with the scent of dried herbs and the soft rustle of woven tapestries. Sari's eyes, sharp and knowing, regarded Alina with a mixture of caution and curiosity. "You carry a heavy burden," Sari said softly, her voice like the rustling leaves outside. "The flower is not just a plant, it holds the weight of the Empire's sins and the silence we have chosen." Alina nodded, feeling the truth of those words settle deep within her. Why has the Empire forgotten? Why hide these memories? Sari sighed, her gaze drifting to a faded tapestry depicting blooming flowers entwined with broken chains. Because to remember is to suffer, to forget is to survive. But some memories, like roots beneath the soil, continue to grow, shaping the tree even when unseen. The conversation left Alina with more questions than answers, but also a growing resolve. She understood now that the flower's power was entwined with the Empire's collective amnesia, fragile balance between pain and hope. Days later, she ventured into the memory markets, where whispered trades and guarded glances filled the air. Stalls overflowed with bottled dreams, captured moments, and fragments of lives sold and bartered like precious gems. The marketplace was a riot of color and sound, alive with the hum of commerce and the undercurrent of secrecy. Here, Alina first felt the true weight of what she was protecting. The flower's legacy was not hers alone. It was a beacon attracting those who sought to rewrite history for their own gain. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the jungle canopy in fiery hues, Alina returned to her modest home, clutching a brittle scroll she had salvaged from the archives. The faded text spoke of rebellion, betrayal, and the slow unraveling of King Velen's reign marked by fear, but also by a vision of unity that had been twisted into tyranny. Her fingers trembled as she traced the words, the petals of the flower on her table seeming to pulse softly with an otherworldly light. The roots of the past had taken hold within her, and the path ahead was shrouded in shadow and bloom. The chapter closed with Alina standing at the threshold of her home. The jungle's chorus rising around her like a living dream, the weight of history pressing upon her heart. The question lingered in the humid air. How much of the Empire's true story was she ready to face, and at what cost? Her journey had deepened, the roots of the past entwined with the fragile hope of tomorrow. As the petals of the Forgotten King slowly unfurled, the rare flower rested on her desk, its petals faintly luminescent in the moonlight filtering through the canopy above. She traced her fingers lightly over the delicate bloom, feeling the subtle pulse beneath its surface. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine, but tonight, an undercurrent of something else, something older, more profound seemed to hang in the air. The days since she had received the flower had been a dizzying mix of scientific curiosity and unshakable unease. Its beauty was undeniable, a complex weave of colors that shifted with every angle. But beneath its allure lay a weight that pressed on Alina's thoughts, pulling her into shadows she could neither explain nor resist. As the jungle settled into nighttime stillness, a low whisper seemed to stir from the petals just beyond the edge of hearing. Gradually, her eyelids grew heavy, and she drifted into a restless sleep. The flowers glow, casting surreal shapes across the walls. In her dreams, the jungle transformed into a kaleidoscope of twisting vines and blooming flowers that shimmered with an unnatural light. Thorned tendrils curled into the shape of a crown, sharp and gleaming, while fragmented images, flash faces contorted in anger and despair. A great hall drenched in shadow, the echo of harsh commands and cruel laughter. Alina found herself standing in a vast garden, where the flowers glowed with an otherworldly iridescence. Yet the beauty was laced with menace. The petals seemed to pulse like beating hearts, and the scent was heady, intoxicating, and faintly bitter. From the swirling mist emerged a figure woven from petals and shadow, regal and ominous. His eyes, piercing and cold, met hers with a weight that crushed her breath. It was King Velen, the forgotten tyrant, his presence both terrifying and hypnotic. "You carry my legacy," he intoned, his voice a blend of authority and sorrow. "Within these petals lies the truth no one dared remember." Alina recoiled, heart pounding, yet held by the haunting magnetism of his gaze. The dreamscape twisted and shifted, memories spilling forth like petals scattered on a storm wind. Visions of conquest and fear, of unity forged in blood and betrayal. The weight of history pressed upon her, threatening to overwhelm. When she awoke, sweat clinging to her skin, the flower's glow had dimmed to a soft pulse. The room was silent but for the distant calls of night birds and the rustle of leaves. Her mind swirled with fragments of the dream, the king's voice still echoing faintly in her ears. She knew she could not face this alone. The next morning, Alina sought out Ellis, the enigmatic dreamwalker, whose reputation for traversing the realms of memory and spirit was whispered in the village, like a secret hymn. She found Ellis beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient tree, its blossoms glowing faintly in the dawn light. The dreamwalker's pale hair shimmered like silver vines, and petals seemed to cling to her cloak as if woven from the garden itself. "You have been touched by the flower's soul," Ellis said softly, her eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that calmed Alina's restless heart. "The memories you carry are not yours alone. They seek a vessel, a guide. Together, they stepped into a twilight realm where flowers bloomed with luminous light and whispered the secrets of forgotten times. In this shared dreamscape, past and present intertwined in a dance of petals and shadow. Alina could feel the pulse of the Tyrant King's memories weaving through the landscape, and with Ellis's guidance, she began to unravel the tangled roots of history that bound her destiny. "You must learn to walk between worlds," Ellis explained. "To understand memory is to understand life itself, its pain, its power, and its fragile beauty." Alina nodded, determination rising amid the swirling dream petals. Her journey had only just begun, and the path ahead was shrouded in mystery and danger. But within the dream's embrace, she found a flicker of hope, chance to heal what had been broken, and to shape a future where memory could be a gift, not a curse. As the dream faded and dawn broke across the jungle canopy, Alina knew the flower's soul was no longer just a secret to study, but a force that would demand everything she had to give. And so, with heart steadying and resolve hardening like the roots beneath her feet, she prepared to face the shadows entwined with the petals of the forgotten king. Within the humble walls of her hut, Alina prepared herself for a journey unlike any she had undertaken before. The flower, cradled carefully in a bed of moss on her table, pulsed faintly, its petals quivering in the dim light, as if alive with a breath of their own. Ellis stood beside her, serene and enigmatic, her silver-vined hair cascading over shoulders cloaked in delicate petals that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. "Are you ready, Alina?" she asked softly, her voice like the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. Alina nodded, swallowing a mixture of excitement and dread. "I must understand. Whatever binds the king's soul to this flower, I need to see it with my own eyes." Together, they stepped toward the threshold of the dreamscape, a shimmering veil that undulated like water caught in moonlight. Ellis extended her hand, and Alina grasped it tightly, feeling an electric pulse surge through her veins. As they crossed, the world shifted, solid earth gave way to an ethereal realm, where shadows took the shape of blooming vines and petals drifted lazily through an endless twilight. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and damp earth, but beneath it lurked a hint of decay, an echo of something long buried. Whispers swirled around them, voices half remembered, half forgotten, their meaning elusive yet insistent. It was here, in this space between waking and sleeping, that the spectral advisors of King Velen awaited. They emerged slowly from the mists, figures woven from petals and shadows, regal and ominous. Their eyes, piercing and hollow, flickered with the dying embers of a forgotten reign. They spoke in tones that thrummed like a distant drum, words layered with meaning and menace. Alina listened, heart pounding, as they recounted the king's vision, a dream of unity forged through fear, a paradise built on the bones of rebellion. Ellis's presence was a steady anchor, guiding Alina through the labyrinth of memories that unfolded like a dark garden. The advisors revealed rituals ancient and arcane, swirling petals coalescing into sigils that bound Velen's essence to the flower's core. These rites were both prison and sanctuary, preserving the tyrant's soul while imprisoning it in fragile bloom. Meanwhile, in the waking world, Morrow paced beneath the great fig tree outside Alina's hut, his sturdy frame tense. He clutched the carved wooden talisman his mother had given him, a talisman meant to protect against unseen dangers. His gaze darted nervously toward the door, worry etching deep lines across his sun-tanned skin. The flower's influence on Alina was becoming palpable, and the stakes had never felt higher. Back within the dreamscape, Alina felt the tendrils of Velen's memories brush against her mind, cold and electric. She resisted the pull, focusing on Ellis's calm voice, the steady rhythm of her breathing, "Remember who you are," Ellis whispered. "Hold on to yourself as the memories wash over you." Visions bloomed before her eyes. The king's fierce command, the bloodied battlefield, the fragile peace balanced on a knife's edge. Yet beneath the cruelty lay a spark of something else, a vision not wholly dark, a man haunted by his own failures and the cost of his ambition. The dreamscape shifted suddenly, petals swirling into a vortex that threatened to engulf Alina's sense of self. She clenched her fists, drawing on the botanical knowledge that had always grounded her. "The flower is not just a prison," she murmured. "It is a living archive, a repository of history and pain." Ellis nodded, eyes reflecting the swirling patterns of the ritual sigils. "And you are the key to unlocking it without unleashing the darkness." As the dreamscape began to dissolve, Alina's mind filled with a renewed sense of purpose, tempered by the sobering truth of the king's complex legacy. The flower's petals, once mysterious and distant, now seemed to pulse with a fragile life that mirrored her own conflicted heart. Emerging from the dreamscape, Alina found Morrow waiting, his expression a mixture of relief and unresolved fear. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She smiled faintly, the weight of what she had seen settling within her. "I'm beginning to understand. But the danger is real, Morrow. The flower's power is growing, and so is the king's influence." He nodded grimly, eyes scanning the surrounding shadows. "Then we must be ready for whatever comes next." And as the jungle night deepened, the Garden of Shadows held its secrets close, waiting for the next petal to unfurl. The air was thick with the fragrance of crushed petals, mingled with the faint hum of whispered recollections, bottled and bartered beneath woven canopies of vibrant fabric. Traders shouted their wares with practiced enthusiasm, their voices weaving in and out of the cacophony like a melody both enticing and dissonant. Alina's green eyes scanned the stalls, taking in the dazzling array of memories displayed in glass vials, shimmering orbs, and delicate petals infused with emotion. Each container was a packet of life, a joy, a sorrow, a secret ready to be bought or sold like precious gems. Her fingers brushed lightly over a cluster of iridescent spheres, feeling the faint warmth of captured laughter. Beside her, Morrow moved with the ease of one born to this chaos. His stocky frame weaved confidently through the crowd, eyes sharp and constantly scanning. He carried with him an air of pragmatism, a groundedness that both comforted and unnerved Alina. She had known him since childhood, but here, in the belly of the Empire's memory trade, his protective instincts were sharper than ever. "Stay close," Morrow murmured, his voice low but urgent, eyes open for those who would take more than memories. Alina nodded, clutching the flower hidden beneath her cloak. The petals trembled faintly against her palm, a subtle pulse that seemed to echo the thrumming energy of the market itself. She was acutely aware of the flower's presence, its mystical aura blending with the vibrant life around her. As they moved deeper into the market, they passed a stall where an elderly woman displayed memories of forgotten festivals' colors, swirling in glass jars like captured sunsets. Nearby, a young boy traded a vial containing the memory of his mother's lullaby, the soft melody escaping in whispered waves. The emotional weight of these exchanges pressed upon Alina's heart, a poignant reminder of the market's delicate balance between hope and exploitation. Suddenly, a shadow shifted at the edge of her vision. Alina's gaze flicked to a man leaning casually against a stall, his eyes cold and calculating. Doran. She had heard the name whispered in cautious tones, ruthless, ambitious, and utterly unrelenting in his pursuit of power through memory trade. He watched her with a predator's focus, his gaze flickering briefly to the bulge beneath her cloak. Alina's breath caught. The flower, she sensed his hunger for it, a dark desire that chilled her to the bone. Morrow stepped closer, his expression hardening. "We're not alone," he whispered. "Keep moving." They quickened their pace, weaving through the throng, but Doran's shadow followed, slipping between stalls and disappearing into narrow alleys, only to reappear moments later. Alina felt the weight of his gaze, a constant pressure that threatened to unravel her composure. The market's vibrant colors blurred, replaced by the cold edge of danger. Each smile and barter masked the undercurrent of greed and fear that fueled this world. Alina's thoughts raced how to protect the flower, how to keep herself and Morrow safe, how to navigate this web of memory and power that now ensnared her. As they reached the edge of the market, the noise dimmed behind them, replaced by the steady thrum of jungle life. Alina exhaled, the tension momentarily easing as she glanced at Morrow. "We need a plan," she said quietly, the flower's petals pulsing softly in agreement. "He won't stop until he has it." Morrow nodded, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "Then we'll have to be smarter, faster." Together, they vanished into the tangled paths of the jungle, the memory market's chaotic symphony fading into the distance, but the threat still very much alive. And somewhere in the shadows, Doran's smirk lingered, an unyielding promise of the battles yet to come. But for Alina, this was only the beginning. The flower's secret was no longer hers alone, and the Empire's fragile peace trembled on the edge of a blade. She tightened her grip on the petals, feeling the echo of forgotten power thrumming beneath her skin. The journey ahead would test every ounce of her resilience, and the memory market was only the first step into a world where past and present collided in the most dangerous of dances. The jungle whispered around her, alive with secrets and shadows, and Alina knew she could no longer walk its paths without watching her back. The flower's song was growing louder, and with it, the storm of memories that would change everything. The rare flower, once a silent curiosity in her collection, had become a tempest swirling in the depths of her mind. Each morning, she awoke with fragments of a life, not her own dark memories of a throne steeped in blood. Echoes of commands barked in cold authority, and fleeting visions of a jungle empire ruled with iron and fear. The delicate petals on her desk seemed to pulse with a life tethered to a soul desperate to reclaim its dominion. She sat in the dim light of her lab, the jungle's humid breath pressing against the windows, and tried to anchor herself. The flower's scent was faint but unmistakably an intoxicating blend of jasmine and something darker, something metallic that set her senses on edge. Her fingers brushed the petals, and suddenly the grand throne room appeared behind her eyelids, draped in shadows that whispered secrets she had no right to hear. A sharp knock broke the trance. Morrow stepped inside, his face etched with concern. "Alina, you're not yourself," he said quietly, eyes flicking to the flower. "This thing, it's changing you." She forced a smile, but her heart thudded erratically. "I'm studying it," she replied, though doubt gnawed at her. "It's just memories. How can they change me?" Morrow shook his head. "These aren't just memories. They're fragments of a will, a spirit, King Velen's essence. It's seeping into your mind, clouding your thoughts. You have to be careful." His words echoed the warnings she'd heard from others in the memory markets. But hearing them from Moratha, one person who had stood by her since childhood, made the danger real and immediate. That night, sleep was a battleground. She awoke gasping, drenched in sweat, the tyrant's voice a chilling whisper in her mind. "You are mine," it hissed, "or you will be nothing." The moonlight cast eerie patterns through the leaves outside. shadows that seemed to twist and pulse with a life of their own. Alina's breath hitched as she sat up, clutching the thin blanket. Was the flower calling to her, or was it the king's soul clawing for dominance? Days passed in a blur of foggy thoughts and fragmented dreams. In the bustling memory market, the cacophony of traders and the scent of exotic spices usually grounded her. But today her gaze was drawn nervously to the flower concealed beneath her cloak. Morrow's voice was steady but urgent. You must decide what this flower means to you before others decide for you. His concern was a lifeline, but the shadow of Velen lurked just beyond her perception, threading through her thoughts. She found herself staring into the jungle stream one afternoon, the water's surface fractured by ripples. Her reflection wavered, shifting between her own face and the shadowy visage of the forgotten tyrant. Petals swirling like ghosts around the edges. Who am I now? She whispered, fingers trembling as they reached toward the water's edge. The question hung heavy, unanswered. Haunted by the king's memories, Alina grappled with a growing fear that the essence trapped within the flower might not only shape her thoughts, but consume her identity altogether. Yet, within that fear stirred a deeper curiosity. Could she harness this power without losing herself? Each day blurred the line between self and other, memory and reality. In this fragile balance, the fate of the flower and the empire rested on her ability to hold onto the shards of her own soul. As the sun dipped below the jungle canopy, painting the sky with streaks of fire, Alina knew the battle was far from over. Somewhere within the petals lay the key to understanding, but also the peril of surrender. She closed her eyes, steadying her breath, and prepared to face the shadows within. The flower's influence was no longer a distant threat, it was a fracture in her reflection, a whisper in her mind, a test of will that would shape the destiny of the jungle empire itself. And Alina Tar was determined to fight for every fragment of who she was. But as the night deepened, a faint, chilling smile brushed across the unseen lips of King Velen's soul. Alina Tar moved cautiously through the crowded paths, the rare flower cradled gently beneath her arm, its petals faintly shimmering in the dusk. The air was heavy with the mingled scents of incense and exotic spices and intoxicating reminder of the empire's complex trade in memories. She avoided the eager eyes of traders and brokers, all hungry for the next valuable fragment of the past. Morrow waited in the shadowed alcove, his stocky frame barely visible against the rough-hewn wooden stalls. His sun-tanned skin glistened faintly in the lantern glow, and the carved talisman hanging from his neck seemed to pulse faintly with protective magic. "Alina," he whispered, his voice low and urgent, "they're closing in. Doran's men have been spotted near the eastern gates." Alina's green eyes, sharp and reflective as the jungle canopy, narrowed. "I suspected as much. The flower's power has drawn more attention than we anticipated." Morrow's jaw clenched. "It's worse than that. Someone close has turned." The words hit Alina like a sudden storm breaking through the humid air. She glanced around, the cacophony of the market fading as suspicion crept in like a creeping vine. Who? Morrow's gaze flickered to a nearby figure, blending seamlessly with the crowd, yet impossibly familiar. "I can't say yet, but trust no one beyond us." As night deepened, Alina returned to her study, a modest space nestled within twisted roots and flowering branches. Moonlight poured through the leaves, casting fragmented shadows that danced over the petals of the mystical flower. She traced the edges of the bloom, feeling the faint pulse of the tyrant king's soul trapped within a heartbeat both alluring and terrifying. Her thoughts churned, restless as the dreamscapes she had begun to explore. The warmth of the flower contrasted sharply with the chill of doubts settling in her heart. Then, footsteps soft but determined approached. The ally she had trusted, whose face had been a comforting presence through these turbulent days, entered the room. Their eyes, once warm, now held a resolute coldness. "Alina," the voice was steady, almost gentle. "You must understand. This empire needs change, and the flower is the key." Alina's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I've sided with those who seek to use the flower not to destroy, but to reshape. You cannot protect it forever." Shock rippled through her veins like icy water. "You betrayed me." The ally's gaze wavered but did not soften. "I betrayed no one. I chose the future over the past." The weight of their words fell between them like a blade. Alina's mind raced, the fragile trust she had built fracturing into shards. The flower trembled faintly in her hands, as if sensing the rupture. Days passed in a blur of whispered warnings and secret meetings. Alina withdrew into the jungle's embrace, standing alone beneath a canopy of twisting vines and blooming flowers. The betrayal stung deeply, yet beneath the pain, a seed of determination took root. She whispered to the flower, "I will protect you not for power, but for the truth." The petals unfurled slightly, glowing softly in the moonlight. Around her, the jungle seemed to hold its breath. The path ahead was fraught with danger and deception. Allies might be foes, and foes might wear the masks of friends. But Alina's resolve was clear, to guard the petals of the forgotten king, and through them, the fragile memory of a past that must not be lost or abused. As the night deepened, a distant howl echoed through the foliage. Call to arms, a herald of the battles yet to come. Alina's eyes shone with quiet steel, ready to face the storm. The flower's song was no longer just a whisper in the dark. It was a call to fight for memory, identity, and the soul of the empire itself. And Alina was listening. As her senses attuned, the swirling mists parted, revealing a jungle battlefield bathed in twilight. The air was thick with the scent of crushed petals and bitter earth, carrying echoes of distant war cries that reverberated through the dense canopy. Alina's breath caught as she stepped through a shimmering veil of petals, each step sinking softly into the damp, mossy ground. Around her, the jungle pulsed with life and death intertwined. Soldiers clad in woven bark armor moved with lethal purpose, their faces painted in patterns of blood and leaf. The clash of steel rang out, punctuated by the anguished cries of those caught in the violent tides of change. It was a vivid memory, yet more visceral than any history she had read in the faded scrolls of her village. Beside her, Elissa's pale form shimmered with ethereal grace. "This is the moment King Velen carved his dominion," she whispered, her voice like the rustle of silver vines. "A time when fear was the currency of power, and unity was forged in fire and blood." Alina swallowed hard, the weight of the revelation pressing like the humid jungle air against her skin. She had known the tyrant king was feared, but witnessing the raw brutality, the destruction of rival tribes, the enforced allegiance through terror-cracked, the sanitized narratives she had grown up with, the scene shifted seamlessly, carrying her to the heart of Velen's empire. The dreamscape morphed into a grand palace, its walls alive with intertwining vines and thorned blossoms that seemed to pulse with a dark vitality. Here, Velen himself stood, a towering figure woven from petals and shadows, his presence commanding and ominous. His eyes, sharp and piercing, burned with the intensity of a ruler convinced of his righteous mission. Around him swirled spectral advisors, their forms flickering like candlelight caught in a breeze. They chanted in a haunting chorus, ancient rites binding the king's soul to the mystical flower that now rested in Alina's hands. The air thrummed with power and menace, a reminder of the price paid for dominion. Alina's heart ached as she observed the paradox within Velen. He was both visionary and tyrant, a man haunted by his own failures even as he imposed his will with iron resolve. The dreamscape revealed his regrets and the isolation that shadowed his reign. As the memories washed over her, Alina felt the pull of the flower's influence, its intoxicating promise of power tangled with the sorrow of its legacy. She grappled with conflicting emotions, fear of the tyrant's lingering will, fascination with his complex humanity, and a burgeoning hope that understanding could pave the way for healing. The jungle beyond the palace whispered with resistance, the quiet rebellion of those who refused to forget the scars left behind. Villagers, caught between hope and despair, moved through the shadows, their eyes reflecting a fragile determination to reclaim their stories. Ellis's voice broke through Alina's turmoil. The past is never truly gone. It breathes in the petals and in the hearts of those who remember. To confront it is to begin the journey toward redemption. Torn between the allure of the flower's power and the weight of its burden, Alina understood that her path forward would demand courage beyond any botanical discovery. The Empire's future depended on her ability to balance remembrance with renewal, to honor the pain without repeating the cruelty. As the dreamscape began to dissolve, the echo of Velen's voice lingered, a whisper, both a warning and a plea. Remember me, not as a tyrant, but as one who dreamt of unity. Alina awoke with the dawn, the flower's petals softly unfurling in her hands. The journey through the echoes of power had changed her irrevocably. Now, more than ever, she was determined to reshape the legacy of memory, to heal the fractures of the jungle empire with empathy, wisdom, and the fragile hope blossoming within her soul. The veins beneath its surface shimmered faintly under the soft glow of bioluminescent petals arranged around her workspace, petals that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Outside, the jungle whispered in its nocturnal cadence the distant call of twilight birds, the rustle of unseen creatures stirring in the underbrush, the steady drip of moisture from the heavy canopy above. It was a symphony of life, a melody of roots and wings intertwined, much like the duality Alina wrestled with within herself. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she traced the delicate lines etched across the leaf's surface, marveling anew at the flower's extraordinary nature. This was no ordinary plant. Its very essence was bound to memories long past, a living archive of pain and power, cruelty and hope. She had spent countless hours studying its unique properties, trying to unravel the mysteries woven into its petals without succumbing to the tyrant king's insidious influence. A soft knock interrupted the quiet, and Morrow's familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway, framed by the flickering light of a lantern he carried. His sun-tanned skin bore the marks of many seasons under the jungle sun, and the carved wooden talisman hung from his neck swung slightly as he stepped inside. The weight of unspoken worries hung heavy around him, and Alina sensed the urgency in his eyes before he even spoke. "Alina," Morrow began, his voice low but steady, "there's more at stake here than just the flower." He moved to sit beside her, the firelight casting dancing shadows across his face. "Last night, memory traders raided my village. They tore through homes, stealing memories like gold, leaving families hollowed and broken. My own kin barely escaped." Alina's heart tightened. She had known the memory trade was ruthless, but hearing it laid bare through Morrow's raw recounting made the danger painfully real. "How did you survive?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. "Luck and a bit of old knowledge passed down from my father," Morrow replied, his gaze unwavering. "But luck won't hold forever. We need to be ready." They talked long into the night, their voices a murmur against the jungle's chorus. Morrow shared tales of loss and resilience, of families torn apart and communities fighting desperately to reclaim their stolen pasts. Alina listened, her resolve hardening. The flower was not just a relic of a forgotten king. It was a beacon in the darkness, a key to healing or destruction depending on whose hands held it. The following day, they ventured deep into the jungle, navigating the tangled vines and dense foliage with practiced ease. The heavy scent of damp earth mingled with the sweet fragrance of blooming orchids, a reminder that life persisted even in the shadows. As they walked, Alina shared her latest botanical insights, explaining how the flower's unique cellular structure could potentially be used to shield memories rather than exploit them. Morrow nodded thoughtfully. "If we can protect the memories, perhaps we can protect the people." Their conversation wove between strategy and hope, the two friends bound by a shared vision of an empire freed from the chains of its own past. At the cliff's edge overlooking the vast jungle canopy, dawn's first light spilled over the horizon, scattering petals of mist like delicate blossoms awakening to a new day. Alina stood quietly, inhaling the fresh air, feeling the roots of her past grounding her, and the wings of possibility lifting her toward the future. She knew the path ahead would be fraught with peril, but with Morrow by her side and the flower's secrets unfolding before her, she was ready to face the shadows. The Empire's survival depended not just on resisting the tyrant's will, but on nurturing the fragile hope that memory could be a gift rather than a weapon. As the sun rose higher, casting gold upon the leaves, Alina whispered to the flower cradled in her hands, "We will find a way, together." The petals shimmered softly in response, a silent promise of the battles yet to come, and the healing yet to be wrought. And with that, the roots of her resolve took hold, and the wings of her courage spread wide, ready to soar into the unknown. Alina followed Ellis's quiet footsteps, her senses alert to every sound, the soft crunch of undergrowth beneath their feet, the distant call of nightbirds, the subtle pulse of magic that seemed to hum in the very air around them. They walked deeper into the Empire's heart, to a place where the jungle opened into a secluded glade, bathed in moonlight and fragrant with the scent of blooming flowers. In the center of the glade stood the flower, the rare, mystical bloom that had so altered Alina's life. It shimmered faintly, its petals glowing with an otherworldly light that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Alina stepped closer, her breath catching in awe as the flower's petals unfurled slowly, revealing intricate patterns that danced like whispered memories. The air thrummed with a soft melody, a song woven from the flower's essence, beckoning her to reach out. Ellis's pale hand lifted, her silver-vined hair catching the moonlight as she spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. "The flower sings to those who listen with their soul, Alina. It holds more than memories, it carries the power to bridge worlds. But to wield it, you must learn to harmonize with its song, not command it." Alina's fingers hovered uncertainly over the petals, their warmth radiating through her skin. Tentatively, she touched the bloom. A jolt of energy surged through her, a delicate yet potent force that threaded into her very being. Her heart raced, but a calm clarity settled over her mind. The flower's magic was alive inside her now, a living thread connecting her to the forgotten king's soul and the Empire's tangled past. Ellis guided Alina through the first lessons of floral magic. They sat beneath an ancient tree with roots entwined in glowing vines, the jungle around them alive with whispered secrets. Ellis's chant wove through the night air, weaving spells that shimmered like silver light between the leaves. Alina closed her eyes, feeling the rhythm of the jungle and the flower's pulse entwine within her. It was a communion of senses: sight, sound, scent, and spirit that transcended ordinary understanding. When Alina opened her eyes, the world shifted. She found herself standing within the dreamscape, a realm where reality melted into memory and magic. Swirling petals glided through the mist, forming luminous pathways that beckoned her forward. She reached out, trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement, and guided the flower's magic to part the misty veil. Behind it, she glimpsed vivid scenes of the Empire's history: tribes united and torn apart, faces marked by hope and despair, shadows of King Velen's reign painted in strokes of light and darkness. Each memory was like a living painting, rich in color and emotion. Alina's heart ached with the weight of the past, but she also felt a growing resolve. The flower's power was not merely to dominate or erase, but to reveal and heal. Here, in the dreamscape, the tyrant's memories could be understood, not feared. Back in the glade, Ellis smiled softly. "You have taken your first step, Alina. The flower song is no longer a whisper, but a melody you can follow. With it, you can navigate the shadows and bring light to forgotten truths." Days passed as Alina practiced the delicate art of floral magic. In the sanctuary of her modest home, she coaxed the flower's petals to bloom anew, releasing shimmering motes of light that danced like fireflies in the twilight. The room filled with a soft fragrance, earthy and sweetened. A faint murmur of forgotten songs echoed in the air. Each moment deepened her connection, and with it, her understanding of the delicate balance she must maintain. She confided in Morrow, describing her progress and newfound hope. "It feels like I'm no longer just a vessel," she told him one evening as they sat beneath the sprawling canopy. "I can shape this power, not just be shaped by it. Maybe I can use it to heal, not harm." Morrow's gaze was steady, his loyalty unwavering. "You're stronger than you know, Alina, but be careful. The flower's magic is as dangerous as it is beautiful." Alina nodded, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The Empire's future depended on her not just to master the flower's magic, but to find a path that honored both the light and shadow of its history. That night, as she drifted into sleep, the flower's petals shimmered softly on her bedside table, their gentle glow casting dancing shadows on the walls. A new song had begun, a song of possibility, of healing, and of the fragile hope that even the darkest memories might bloom into something beautiful. But deep within the dreamscape, the whisper of the forgotten king stirred, listening closely to the melody that now bound them both. And Alina knew the journey was only just beginning. Every rustle of leaves and crack of twig echoed loudly in her ears. Beside her, Morrow's steady presence was a small comfort amid the growing storm. "We can't let them find out where you're hiding it," Morrow whispered, eyes scanning the shadows. "Doran's already sniffing around the market, and I've heard whispers of other factions gearing up for a move." Alina nodded, her green eyes sharp despite the fatigue shadowing her face. "I understand, but we can't just keep running. The flower's power is too important, too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands." They reached a small clearing where the sunlight filtered through the canopy in streaks of gold and emerald. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming orchids, a fragile beauty at odds with the tension that gripped her heart. Here, Alina allowed herself a moment to study the flower again. Its petals, delicate yet vibrant, shimmered faintly, as if breathing with a life of their own. The whispered memories trapped within stirred restlessly. "I wish Ellis were here," Alina murmured. I feel the weight of those memories growing heavier. If I'm to protect the flower, I need to understand how to harness its power without losing myself. Morrow's gaze softened. She's guiding you through the dreamscape. But this world, this jungle, it's just as dangerous. That night, under a sky where stars blinked like distant fires, Alina entered the dreamscape once more. Ellis awaited her amid a swirling garden of petals and shadows. The dreamscape was alive, pulsing with the memories of King Velen and the jungle empire's shadowed past. Floral patterns blossomed and twisted around them, scent thick and intoxicating, carrying echoes of long-forgotten rituals. The factions close in. Ellis's voice was a soft murmur against the hum of petals. You must learn to cloak the flower's essence within the dream, hide its power where no waking eye can find it. Alina reached out, touching a glowing petal that rippled beneath her fingertips. Images flashed, visions of betrayal, battles, and the tyrant king's iron grip on the empire. Yet beneath the cruelty lay a complex soul, haunted by regrets and a vision twisted by fear. I don't want to be his prisoner, Alina said, voice trembling. But I can't just destroy the flower either. Its memories could heal if used wisely. Ellis nodded solemnly. Balance is fragile. Trust is scarce. Be cautious. Meanwhile, in the bustling memory market, Doran wove through the crowd with practiced ease. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and the sharp tang of memory vials being traded like precious gems. His eyes, sharp and calculating, searched for any sign of the flower's presence. Rumors had reached him, whispers of a rare bloom with unmatched power. To Doran, it was not just a prize, but a means to cement his dominance in the treacherous world of memory trade. He paused near a store where a vendor displayed shimmering orbs of stored memories. The cacophony of voices and clinking glass was a stark contrast to the silent, potent threat the flower posed. Find it, he ordered under his breath, no matter the cost. Back in the jungle, Alina found herself alone beneath the moon's silver glow. The night was alive with the chorus of insects and the rustle of leaves, but her thoughts were a tempest. The flowers, petals pulsed softly in her hands, a heartbeat bridging past and present. She felt the tyrant's lingering presence pressing against her mind, a cold whisper promising power and dominion. I won't let you take me, she whispered fiercely, not without a fight. Her resolve hardened like the bark of the ancient trees surrounding her. The veil of petals that cloaked the flower was both a shield and a prison. To protect the empire, she would need to navigate the treacherous dance between light and shadow, memory and forgetting, power and freedom. The days ahead promised danger and revelation, and Alina knew that the fragile peace of the jungle empire hung in the balance like a delicate bloom in a storm. As the tendrils of the past and present entwined, her journey was far from overreach. Step deeper into the mystery threatened to unravel not only the empire's secrets, but her very soul. Yet beneath the weight of uncertainty, a cautious hope flickered. In the heart of the jungle, amid petals and shadows, the future awaited its guardian. Alina Tar sat cross-legged on the woven grass mat, her green eyes fixed intently on Sari, the village elder who had agreed to share secrets long buried beneath layers of silence. The flickering light of the fire carved sharp shadows across Sari's lined face, illuminating the silver streaks braided with wildflowers in her hair. Her voice, soft yet unwavering, wove through the humid air like a haunting melody as she began the tale. Before Velen's shadow fell upon us, Sari whispered, our tribes lived in tenuous harmony, bound by ancient rites and respect for the jungle's breath. But the king sought unity not through peace, but through fear and iron. Alina leaned forward, the faintest tremor betraying her resolve. The memory of the flower's petals, each holding whispers of the tyrant's soul, seemed to pulse faintly against her chest. The stories Sorry told were not the sanitized versions. Found in the Empire's official archives, those dry records that erased pain and dissent but raw. Vivid accounts passed down in secret. Tales of uprisings quelled with ruthless efficiency, of sacred groves burned to ash, and of a people's resilience etched into the very roots of the jungle. After hours of listening, the fire reduced to embers. Sorry rose and gestured toward a concealed trapdoor beneath a tangle of hanging vines. "There is more," she said gravely. "Hidden beneath the village is a chamber where our ancestors kept their truths. Few have dared to enter in decades." With a mixture of trepidation and determination, Alina followed through the narrow passage, the air growing cooler and dense with the musty scent of aged parchment and forgotten wood. The chamber was a shrine to memory itself, scrolls and tablets layered in dust, their faded script a fragile bridge to a past suppressed by the Empire's collective amnesia. Alina's fingers trembled as she traced the delicate lines of a scroll chronicling a great battle where tribes united to resist Velen's forces. The words spoke of sacrifice and hope, of leaders who dreamed not of conquest but coexistence. Here was a truth long erased, a story that reframed the tyrant not as an inevitable ruler but as a conqueror who crushed potential futures. Days passed as Alina returned repeatedly to the chamber, piecing together fragments of oral histories and forbidden texts. Each revelation deepened her understanding of the Empire's complex legacy, revealing the high stakes of memory control. To erase or manipulate memory was not merely an act of forgetting it, was a weapon that shaped identity, loyalty, and power. One afternoon, as the golden jungle light filtered through the canopy, Alina and Sorry walked through a sacred grove adorned with blossoms that seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow. Petals drifted gently on the humid breeze, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine and wild orchids. Sorry pointed toward ancient carvings on moss-covered stone, symbols of rebellion, unity, and the enduring spirit of the tribes. "This garden is a living testament," Sorry said softly. "Even as Velen sought to break us, the jungle itself remembers. It holds the seeds of resistance and renewal." Alina reached out to touch a vibrant flower whose petals curled like tiny flames, feeling a surge of connection to those who had come before. The weight of the tyrant's memories within the flower she carried now felt balanced by this newfound history, one of courage and hope. Later, standing at the edge of a crumbling stone altar entwined with vines and blossoms, Alina closed her eyes and let the jungle's pulse wash over her. The engraved symbols beneath her fingertips whispered of defiance, sacrifice, and the possibility of reconciliation. The garden's secret was no longer hidden, it was a beacon. As she opened her eyes, Alina's resolve hardened. The path ahead would be fraught with peril, but armed with the truth of the tribe's resistance. She could confront the darkness of the past and fight for a future where memory was a gift, not a chain. With the flower's petals unfurling softly in her satchel, Alina stepped back into the light, ready to weave the garden's secret into the Empire's unfolding story. The balance between remembering and forgetting, between destruction and renewal, rested now in her hands. But as the shadows lengthened beneath the jungle canopy, a distant rustle warned that powerful forces watched, waiting for the moment to strike. The garden's secret was revealed, but would it be the salvation the Empire desperately needed, or another spark in the tinderbox of memory's perilous trade? Alina's breath caught. The journey was just beginning. Shadows danced across the walls, cast by the flickering lantern light that barely illuminated the delicate petals of the mystical flower resting on her wooden desk. She reached out tentatively, fingers barely brushing the velvety surface of the bloom. A shiver ran down her spine as a whisper flickered in her mind, the tyrant's presence stirring within the depths of her consciousness. It was no longer a distant echo, but a living thread woven into the fabric of her being. The soul of King Velen, the forgotten tyrant, pulsed softly, a blend of power and menace that unsettled her. Alina clenched her jaw, fighting the urge to recoil. But the flower's essence seeped into her thoughts, a relentless tide that blurred the edges of her identity. She closed her eyes, and the world shifted beneath her. The sterile walls of her study melted away, replaced by a garden unlike any she had known, a realm of dream and memory where the laws of nature bent and twisted. Flowers bloomed in impossible hues, petals dripping with iridescent dew, but beneath their beauty lay something darker. Blood-red blossoms unfurled alongside thorns sharp enough to draw blood, scraping her skin as she walked. From the shadows emerged King Velen, his form woven of petals and shadows, regal yet ominous. His piercing eyes held both command and something achingly human: regret, pain, and longing. He spoke, his voice a haunting melody that resonated deep within her mind. He recounted his brutal victories, the unification of tribes through fear and force, but also the moments of solitude and despair that followed his reign. Alina felt a strange empathy stir within her, conflicting with the terror that gripped her heart. How could someone so cruel also be so human? The duality unsettled her, pulling her deeper into a labyrinth of emotion where compassion and fear collided. Suddenly, the dreamscape dissolved, and she found herself by the riverbank, the scent of jasmine and wet earth filling her lungs. Moro was there, his sun-tanned skin glistening with sweat, eyes sharp with concern. He spoke urgently, warning her that the flower's influence threatened to consume her, eroding the boundaries between her soul and the tyrant's. "You're slipping, Alina," he said, voice low but firm. "You have to fight it, or you'll lose yourself to him." His words echoed in her mind, stirring a tempest of doubt. Was she still the botanist who sought understanding, or was she becoming a vessel for a darkness too vast to control? Later, under the guidance of Ellis, the enigmatic dreamwalker, Alina traversed a forest of silver petals, where silence reigned and forgotten voices whispered on the breeze. Ellis's presence was a calming force, a reminder that memory was both shadow and light, pain and hope intertwined. "You must embrace both," Ellis counseled softly, her voice like the rustle of leaves. "Only then can you find balance between the past's cruelty and the future's promise." Alina nodded, feeling the weight of her struggle, but also a fragile hope taking root. The journey was far from over, but she understood now that the path to healing lay not in denial, but in acceptance of the tyrant's soul, her own fears, and the possibility of redemption. As dawn broke over the jungle empire, Alina stood at the threshold of transformation, the petals and thorns within her heart entwined in a delicate dance of light and shadow. The battle for her identity had only just begun, and the choices she would make next could shape not only her fate but the future of the empire itself. What price would she pay to keep her soul intact? And could the petals of the forgotten king ever truly bloom into something beautiful? The questions hung in the air like fragile blossoms waiting to unfold. As Alina prepared to confront the darkness within and beyond, Alina moved carefully through the labyrinth of stalls, her eyes flickering to the precious flower nestled within the folds of her satchel. The petals, faintly luminescent in the dim jungle light filtering through the canopy above, seemed almost to pulse with a heartbeat of their own. She was acutely aware that the flower was the prize everyone sought, and its presence here was both a beacon and a burden. Beside her, Morrow's presence was a steadying force. His stocky frame and sun-tanned skin contrasted sharply with the delicate flora Alina so cherished, but his keen eyes scanned every face, every shadow. "We can't afford to let our guard down," he murmured, his voice low but firm. "Doran's men are likely already tailing us." Alina nodded, her fingers tightening around the satchel strap. The market was a dangerous place, melting pot of traders, thieves, and memory dealers whose allegiances shifted as quickly as the tides. Memories were currency, but also weapons, and the stakes had never been higher. Suddenly, a piercing whistle cut through the chatter, sharp and commanding. The crowd's attention snapped to a group of rough-looking men who pushed through the stalls with practiced aggression. Doran's enforcers, unmistakable in their coordinated movements and the glint of weapons beneath their cloaks. "Protect the flower," Morrow shouted, stepping forward to intercept two attackers who surged toward Alina. The market erupted into chaos as vendors scrambled to secure their goods and patrons fled, the air thick with shouts and the clash of steel. Alina's heart pounded as she ducked behind a stall, the flower's petals brushing against her palm, warmth radiating from it. She closed her eyes briefly, drawing on the knowledge Ellis had imparted. The flower's magic was as much a shield as it was a prison. With a whispered incantation, she extended her hands toward the advancing assailants. Vines burst forth from cracks in the stone floor, twisting and curling with vivid green life, thorns gleaming sharply. The attackers were ensnared. Their movements slowed and then halted as the plant matter tightened around them, the scent of blossoming petals mingling with the tension in the air. Morrow grunted as he dispatched two more foes, his carved talisman swinging with practiced force. "Alina, now's our chance." But the battle was far from over. Doran himself appeared at the edge of the fray, his sharp eyes locking onto the glowing flower. He smiled coldly, signaling reinforcements who poured into the market like a dark tide. The fight turned desperate. Every moment stretched thin with the possibility of loss. Amid the turmoil, Alina felt a strange calm wash over her, the flowers, power intertwining with her own resolve. She could feel the memories within it, the tyrant king's presence, fierce and commanding, urging her to seize control. But she pushed the influence back, focusing instead on the living green around her. The tide began to turn. The attackers, entangled and disoriented, started to retreat under the pressure of the combined botanical magic and Morrow's steadfast defense. Sirens wailed in the distance, guards responding to the disturbance. Breathless, Alina and Morrow found refuge behind a toppled cart, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared relief. "We held them off," Morrow said, wiping sweat from his brow. "But this won't be the last attempt." Alina nodded, clutching the flower close. The market was scarred, but the battle had revealed something crucial there: bond, their strengths, and the unyielding importance of the flower they guarded. As the guards arrived, dispersing the remnants of the attackers, Alina's gaze drifted to the glowing petals. The memory market siege was over, but the war for the Empire's soul was just beginning, and she was ready to face it, whatever the cost. Outside, the jungle whispered its eternal song, shadows lengthening as night approached. Somewhere deep within the flower, the forgotten king stirred, waiting for the next petal to unfurl. The silver-haired dreamwalker moved with a fluid grace, petals drifting from her cloak like whispers caught in a gentle breeze. Alina's heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and unease. The previous dreams had been passive, visions intruding unbidden. But now she was stepping willingly into the realm where memories lived and lingered. A place where time was less a line and more a tangled thicket. Alice paused before a curtain of translucent petals, their edges flickering with iridescent light. "Beyond this veil lies the garden of lost souls," she said softly, her voice like a melody woven from the jungle's own sighs. "Here, memories that refuse to fade take root, anchoring spirits in limbo. To heal the Empire, we must nourish their release." Alina reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed the petals. A cool rush enveloped her, and the world shifted. They stepped into a vast garden bathed in twilight hues, where flowers bloomed with faces and voices murmured beneath leaves. The landscape was both beautiful and sorrowful, a living testament to history's refused and pain unspoken. Ethereal figures drifted like fading blossoms caught in a restless wind. Their forms flickered, half-formed and fragile, eyes wide with confusion and longing. Alina's breath caught as she recognized the unmistakable ache of souls weary from being trapped in their own memories. "These are the forgotten," Alice explained, kneeling beside a figure whose translucent hands clutched spectral vines binding it to a twisted tree of memories. Bound by grief, fear, or regret, they cannot move on without aid. Alina swallowed her fear and stepped forward. "How do we help them?" she asked. "Touch them," Alice said, "and let the flower's magic flow through you. It weaves memory and life, untying what binds. But be warned, these souls carry echoes of pain that can reach deep into your own heart." Gathering her courage, Alina extended her hands toward the trapped spirit. As her fingers neared the spectral vines, a soft glow emanated from the flower she carried, pulsing like a heartbeat. Warmth spread through her palms, and the vines trembled, loosening their grip. Suddenly, the spirit's anguished face twisted in a silent scream. Memories of betrayal and loss washing over Alina in vivid flashes of shadow and flame. She staggered but held firm, focusing on the gentle light radiating from her hands. Slowly, the vines unraveled, dissolving into motes of shimmering dust. The spirit's eyes softened, and a peaceful smile blossomed before it faded into a cascade of glowing petals that drifted upward and vanished. Alina exhaled, her body trembling from the intensity. Alice placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You have the gift," she said quietly, "but the path is perilous. Each soul freed strengthens the Empire's healing, yet also deepens your bond with the flower and with the King's lingering presence." As they moved deeper into the dreamscape, Alice chanted ancient words, petals swirling around them in luminous spirals. The dreamscape shifted and twisted, revealing scenes from the Empire's tangled past tribes, united by fear. Gardens blooming with both beauty and blood, memories folding over one another like tangled vines. Alina's senses were overwhelmed by the mingling of sight, sound, and feeling. She saw children's laughter echo through the leaves, heartrending cries hidden beneath the canopy, and the steady pulse of life intertwining all. The weight of the Empire's collective memory pressed upon her. Yet there was a thread of hope woven through the darkness, fragile promise that the past could be honored without repeating its cruelties. They came upon another spirit, trapped in a web of memories too painful to face alone. This time, Alina reached out with greater confidence, channeling the flower's magic with steady hands. The spirit's form brightened, the spectral vines retreating as a soft melody filled the era song of release and renewal. When the last soul in the garden was freed, Alina and Alice stepped back through the veil of petals. The jungle's familiar sounds greeted them, the rustle of leaves, distant bird calls, the steady hum of life. Yet something within Alina had changed. The burdens she carried felt lighter, tempered by a growing resolve to protect and heal. "The work is far from over," Ella said, her silver eyes reflecting the dawn. "But you have taken the first true step. Remember, the flower's power is both a gift and a trial. The Empire's wounds run deep, and healing demands courage beyond the dreamscape." Alina nodded, clutching the flower close. As the sun rose over the jungle empire, petals of light danced in the morning breeze, whispering promises of renewal and hope. She knew the path ahead would be fraught with peril, but for the first time, she felt ready to walk it. And somewhere, deep within the flower's heart, the forgotten king stirred, his ancient spirit watching, waiting for what she did not yet know. The Dreamwalker's path had opened, and with it, the possibility of change. But in the quiet that followed, a single petal drifted from the bloom, twisting slowly on the wind, silent herald of challenges yet to come. The rare petals of the flower lay half-opened in a shallow basin of water at the Centaur living relic, both beautiful and malevolent. Around her, the gentle rustling of leaves and distant calls of jungle creatures wove a fragile soundtrack to her growing unease. But beneath this natural symphony, a whisper threaded through the air, a subtle and insistent murmur that she could no longer ignore. At first, the whispers were fleeting, barely a breath against her consciousness. But with each passing day, they grew louder, more insistent, curling around her thoughts like vines, tightening their grip. The tyrant king's soul, trapped within the flower's petals, seeped into her mind, threading its memories and emotions into the fabric of her own. She could feel it pressing against the walls of her identity, probing for cracks. The sensation was both intoxicating and terrifying. Alina pressed her palms against the worn wooden table, steadying herself as a shiver ran down her spine. "I am not him," she whispered, a fragile mantra in the oppressive stillness. But the words felt hollow, swallowed by shadows that twisted in the corners of her vision. Her solitude was broken by the hesitant knock at the door. Moreau's familiar voice filtered through. "Alina, are you all right?" The concern in his tone was unmistakable. "Come in," she called, forcing a steadiness she did not feel. Moreau stepped into the dim room, his sun-tanned skin contrasting with the cool green hues of the plants. His eyes, sharp and watchful, immediately found the flower. "It's changing you," he said quietly, crossing his arms. "I see it in your eyes, hear it in your voice. You're drifting away from us." Alina's gaze dropped to the flower's petals, which now pulsed with an almost imperceptible rhythm, like a heartbeat beneath skin. "I'm not drifting," she replied, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "I'm learning. The memories inside this flower, they're not just echoes. They're pieces of a history that can't be forgotten." "At what cost?" Moreau asked, stepping closer. "You're becoming someone else. The king's shadow is growing inside you. If you lose yourself to him, what will be left of Alina Tar?" She clenched her fists, the frustration bubbling beneath her calm veneer. "I'm not afraid of losing myself. I'm afraid of what happens if no one remembers." The tension between them thickened the air, charged with years of friendship bending under the weight of secrets and fears. Moreau's expression softened, but his words remained firm. "We need to face this together. You don't have to carry it alone." Later that night, Alina found herself walking the jungle paths toward the secluded grove where Ellis awaited. The Dreamwalker's presence was a balm and a challenge, a reminder that the boundary between waking and dreaming, past and present, was thinner than she dared admit. Ellis greeted her with a nod, silver vines of hair shimmering under the moonlight. "Your mind phrase," she observed, her voice like the rustle of petals in a breeze. "The tyrant's memories claw at your soul, seeking to unravel your essence." Alina lowered herself onto a mossy stone, exhaustion weighing heavy in her bones. I don't know how to hold on. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing inside this flower. Ellis extended a slender hand, touching Alina's forehead lightly. Let me show you. Together, they slipped into the dreamscape. The world blurred into mist and petals, colors swirling like liquid light. They stood in a vast garden of shadows where spectral figures drifted, ancient advisors of King Velen, their voices a chorus of regret and power. Ellis guided Alina to a fractured memory, a vision of the king alone in his throne room, surrounded by silence and fading glory. His eyes, piercing and haunted, met hers across time. He was lonely, Ellis whispered. His cruelty was born from fear and failure. You share more with him than you know. Alina's heart pounded as empathy and fear tangled within her. The king's solitude mirrored her own isolation, yet she refused to surrender to it. I will not become him, she vowed. The dreamscape dissolved, leaving her breathless beneath the canopy of flowering vines. The tyrant's voice surged inside her, a storm of demands and memories. She grasped the flower tightly, grounding herself in the jungle's vibrant life. This ends with me, she whispered, eyes shining with determination. I choose who I am. Yet as the night deepened, the threads around her frayed further, and the battle for her soul was far from over. In the quiet aftermath, a single petal drifted to the floor, a fragile promise of the war within and the hope that still flickered amidst the shadows. The rare blossom, cradled gently in her palm, pulsed faintly, its petals glowing with a soft inner light that seemed to breathe with secrets. She reached for her knife, the blade shimmering under the bioluminescent fungi that clung to the walls like stars fallen into the jungle's embrace. With meticulous care, she sliced a petal away, exposing the delicate veins within. What she saw made her breath catch. The veins were not merely channels of sap, but intricate filaments, shimmering with iridescent hues that shifted and danced like liquid light. As her eyes adjusted, faint images flickered within those delicate strands, whispers of faces, fragments of voices, shreds of memories caught and preserved in a botanical web. It was as if the flower had grown not just from soil and water, but from the very essence of the past itself. Alina's heart pounded with a mixture of awe and a creeping sense of dread. This was no ordinary plant. It was a living archive, a garden of remembrance, weaving the intangible into the tangible. She recalled the stories whispered by Sorry, the village elder, of plants that could hold history in their roots and petals. But this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. A fusion of life and memory that transcended the limits of science and magic. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her journal, hurriedly sketching the intricate patterns she glimpsed within the petal's veins. The realization dawned heavy and profound. Memories here were not just stored, they were alive, growing and shifting as part of the flower's very being. The implications were staggering. To hold this flower was to hold history itself, to wield the power to preserve or manipulate the past in ways no one had dared before. A sudden rustle at the open window broke her reverie. Morrow stepped in, his sun-tanned face shadowed with concern. Alina, he said quietly, closing the door behind him, the markets grow restless. Word spreads of your discovery. Factions from all corners of the empire are moving, hungry for the flower. She looked up, green eyes meeting his steady gaze. I know, but there's more. The flower, it's alive with memories, not just magic. The past isn't just recorded here, it's intertwined with the plant's very life. Morrow's brows furrowed. That kind of power, it could change everything, or destroy it all. Alina nodded, the weight of her responsibility pressing down like the humid jungle air. I must understand it fully. and decide how it should be used. Later, under the silver light of the moon, Ellis emerged from the shadows, her hair flowing like woven silver vines. "Come," she whispered, "I will show you the garden where memory and life dance as one." Together, they slipped into the dreamscape, a realm where reality blurred with reverie. Their flowers bloomed with faces ancient souls, captured in petals that whispered secrets on the breeze. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and forgotten tears. Alina reached out, touching a blossom that hummed with the voice of a long-lost child, her laughter echoing softly like wind through leaves. "This is what you hold," Ellis said, "a garden of souls, a place where memory is not forgotten but lives, breathes, and waits." The beauty was overwhelming, but so too was the haunting knowledge that such power could be a curse. Could she protect this fragile balance? Could the empire endure if its past was no longer buried but intertwined with the living present? As dawn crept over the jungle canopy, Alina found herself alone beneath the great trees, the flower resting softly in her lap. The chorus of cicadas and distant calls of exotic birds faded into a solemn silence. Her mind wrestled with the ethical tempest swirling within her, a question of stewardship or dominion, of healing or harm. The garden's heart beat in rhythm with her own, a living symbol of memory's fragile power. And Alina knew the path ahead would demand not only knowledge and courage, but a reckoning with the very soul of the empire. Her fingers brushed a petal, and the whisper of the forgotten king stirred faintly. A reminder that the past was never truly gone and that the future depended on the choices she would make. The jungle held its breath, awaiting her next move. Alina moved cautiously, her boots silent against the mossy earth. Beside her, Morrow's steady presence was a balm against the tightening grip of anxiety that had settled into her chest over the past days. "They're watching," Morrow murmured, eyes scanning the twisting vines and gnarled roots as if the very forest might betray them. Alina nodded, clutching the delicate flower wrapped carefully in a cloth at her side. The petals shimmered faintly, as if aware of the danger lurking in the empire's tangled politics. "I can feel it too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The factions are closing in, but I don't know who's truly after it." Morrow's gaze hardened. Doran's been seen in the memory markets again. His reach is longer than we thought. The memory market was a chaotic heart of the empire's economy, a sprawling maze of stalls and shadowed alcoves where memories were bought and sold like precious jewels. It was a place where trust was scarce and betrayal often bloomed like poisonous flowers. That evening, under the flickering light of hanging lanterns shaped like blossoms, Alina and Morrow entered the market. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and the faint, eerie hum of traded memories, fragments of joy, pain, love, and loss, swirling invisibly among the crowd. Ellis awaited them in a secluded corner, her silver hair glowing softly in the dimness, petals woven into her cloak fluttering with each subtle movement. "The flower reacts," Ellis said, her voice a melodic whisper as she reached out, tracing ancient sigils in the air above the petals. "Its power is awakening. We must be vigilant." Alina watched as the flower pulsed gently, a living nexus of memory and magic. The Dreamwalker's chants seemed to weave a protective aura. But even Ellis's formidable presence could not mask the growing unease threading through the market. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the crowd. Doran's sharp eyes locked onto Alina, a predator's smile curling his lips. With a subtle signal, figures cloaked in the garb of memory traders began to converge, their footsteps muffled but purposeful. "We need to leave," Morrow hissed, grabbing Alina's arm. But the market's labyrinthine paths seemed to close in around them, every alleyway a potential trap. Retreat turned into a tense dance of evasion, the trio slipping through narrow corridors, the whispered calls of their pursuers growing louder. The jungle's night air pressed close, thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers, both beautiful and deadly. Back in the safety of a hidden grove, Alina's relief was short-lived. A trusted ally, whose face she had seen since childhood, approached with hesitant steps. "Alina," the voice was soft, almost pleading. "There are forces you don't understand. The flowers, power. It must be controlled." Her heart faltered as the words unfolded into confession of betrayal that sliced through her like a cold wind. The allies' allegiance lay with those seeking to harness the flower's power for domination, not healing. "Why?" Alina's voice cracked. "After all we've been through." The alley's eyes, once warm, now shimmered with cold calculation. "The empire must be forged anew. Sometimes, past cruelty is necessary for future strength." As Petals drifted silently to the soil beneath them, Alina felt the weight of the empire's shadows pressing in. The flower's glow dimmed, reflecting the fracture of trust that now threatened to unravel everything. Yet within the depths of despair, a spark of resolve ignited. She would not allow the past to be weaponized again. The flowering future of the jungle empire depended on her courage and discernment. "We move forward," Alina declared, eyes blazing with determination. "Together or not at all." The night whispered around them, carrying the scent of blossoms and betrayal, and the promise of battles yet to come. The rare flower, nestled beside her, seemed to hum with a subtle energy, its petals quivering like the wings of a restless bird. Guided by Ellis's whispered incantations, Alina closed her eyes and let the dreamscape fold around her endless expanse where past and present wove together, beneath a sky blooming with stars like fragile blossoms. She stepped into the dream with cautious reverence, the vibrant greens of the jungle melting into the cold marble and shadowed corridors of a palace. But this was no ordinary palace. Its walls seemed to pulse with the slow decay of withering flowers, petals drifting down like snowflakes, each petal a whisper of sorrow and loss. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and crushed blossoms, and faint voices echoed murmurs of lament, accusations, and fleeting hope. Alina moved through the halls, her senses heightened. She could hear the faint rustle of silk, the distant clang of a ceremonial bell, the soft sobbing of a man burdened by memories too heavy for any crown. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, King Velen, the forgotten tyrant, manifest in form both regal and broken. His presence was striking, woven from petals and shadows, his eyes piercing yet clouded with a haunted vulnerability that unsettled Alina's heart. "Why do you come?" he asked, his voice a fragile thread of sound, trembling with an unspoken pain. "To condemn me, to seize my power." Alina swallowed, the weight of his gaze pressing upon her. "I came seeking truth," she said softly, "not to wield power, but to understand." Velen's form flickered, shifting between the grandeur of a sovereign and the fragile decay of a fallen man. "I was once a king," he murmured, "a ruler who forged unity through fear and iron will. Yet I fell betrayed, not only by others, but by my own ambition." Ellis appeared beside Alina, her silver-vined hair glowing faintly in this spectral realm. "Look," she urged, gesturing toward a garden beyond the palace walls, where ghostly petals bloomed in ethereal light. Together, they moved through this garden of memories, each bloom revealing a shard of Velen's past, moments of tenderness with his people, flashes of doubt and regret, the heavy silence after bloodshed. Alina's heart ached as she witnessed the man behind the tyrant, a soul trapped between cruelty and compassion, haunted by the very legacy he left behind. One memory lingered, longer a vision of Velen seated alone beneath a massive tree, the crown beside him fractured and tarnished. Petals drifted down like tears as he whispered a lament to the wind, mourning a future lost to his own making. The dream began to fade, the garden dissolving into mist. And Alina awoke with a start, the flower's petals gently opening beside her. Her mind swirled with new understanding. The tyrant was not merely a monster to be destroyed, but a complex spirit whose regrets could teach the Empire and herself about the delicate balance of power and redemption. As dawn crept through her window, Alina resolved to embrace this revelation. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and political intrigue, but she now carried a seed of compassion that might blossom into healing. With the flower's mysterious power and the memories it held, she would strive not for domination, but for reconciliation. The Empire's future hung in the balance, and Alina knew that understanding the lament of a forgotten king was the first step toward shaping a world where memory was not a weapon, but a bridge. And as the morning light kissed the petals, a quiet hope stirred within her, a fragile promise that even in the shadow of tyranny, renewal was possible. Outside, the jungle thrummed with the chorus of cicadas and distant calls of nightbirds. But inside, a different kind of storm brewed. The rare flower sat on the wooden table before her, its petals slowly unfurling in the dim light cast by flickering oil lamps. A faint luminescence radiated from within the blossom, casting twisting shadows across the walls, shadows that seemed to move with purpose and intent. Alina's green eyes, sharp and reflective like the jungle canopy, remained fixed on the flower. She felt Aitan's unsettling presence pressing against the edges of her consciousness, whispering in tones both commanding and seductive. The spirit of King Velen, the forgotten tyrant, was stirring once more, his voice threading through the petals like a dark vine. "You cannot deny me forever, Alina," the voice murmured, low and resonant. "You hold my legacy, my power. Together we could reshape this empire." Her breath caught in her throat, fingers trembling as she reached out to touch the flower's glowing petals. The contact sent a shiver through her, both terrifying and intoxicating. She closed her eyes, summoning every ounce of her botanical knowledge and the lessons Ellis had imparted about floral magic. The flower was not merely a vessel, it was a conduit, a bridge between past and present, life and memory. Suddenly, the room shifted, colors bleeding and warping as Alina was pulled into the dreamscape, the surreal realm where memories and reality entwined. The jungle around her dissolved into a tapestry of shifting petals and shadowy figures. At its center stood Velen, his form regal yet warped, woven from petals and shadows, eyes like burning embers that pierced through the dream's mists. "Why resist what is inevitable?" Velen's voice echoed, both a command and a plea. "Embrace me, and power will be yours." Alina steadied herself, feeling the oppressive weight of his presence trying to drown her will. Her hands moved instinctively, weaving gestures learned from Ellis's teachings. Soft chants escaped her lips as tendrils of floral magic unfurled, wrapping around her like a protective cloak. Petals blossomed mid-air, their scent sharp and sweet, grounding her to her own essence. From the periphery, Ellis appeared, pale and ethereal, her silver vine hair flowing like liquid moonlight. She began a counterchant, her voice a soothing balm that wove through the dreamscape, reinforcing Alina's shield. Nearby, Morrow's steady presence was a tether to the physical world, his carved talisman glowing faintly in the dream's haze. Velen's figure flickered, his menace wavering under the combined strength of Alina and her allies. The tyrant's memories surged visions of his brutal conquest, the anguish of those he ruled, his own haunted regrets. But Alina met each with empathy and defiance. She refused to be consumed. "You are not my prisoner," she declared, voice steady despite the tempest inside her. "I carry your memories, but I am not your vessel." The dreamscape trembled as Velen's form recoiled, petals dissolving into gentle blossoms carried away by an unseen breeze. The flower's glow softened, no longer a beacon of oppression but a quiet light of possibility. Back in her laboratory, Alina opened her eyes, heart pounding but spirit unbroken. The battle had been fierce, but she had held her ground. The tyrant's spirit was not vanquished, lingered still, but so did her resolve. She turned to Ellis, who nodded with a serene smile, and then to Morrow, who let out a relieved breath. Together, they had crossed the Petals' edge, stepping into a new chapter where power would no longer mean domination but understanding. Yet, as Alina looked once more at the flower, now resting calmly in its pot, she knew this was only the beginning. The struggle for memory, identity, and the soul of the Empire was far from over. But for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever would come, armed with knowledge, magic, and an unyielding heart. The jungle outside whispered on, its secrets waiting to unfold like petals in the dawn. Alina sat cross-legged on a woven mat, her fingers tracing the delicate fibers of ancient scrolls spread before her. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows across the walls, where faded tapestries depicted scenes of the jungle empire's long-forgotten past. Sari's voice, low and steady, wove through the dim room like a solemn hymn. "Velen was not merely a tyrant," she said, her eyes clouded with memories. "He was a man torn between vision and cruelty. His unification of the tribes was born of fierce determination, but betrayal was the seed that shattered his crown." Alina listened intently, the weight of those words settling deep within her chest. The flower in her possession pulsed faintly, as if echoing the elder's sorrow. She had long known Valon's memory was complex, but today she glimpsed the fractures beneath his legend. "Tell me," Alina urged gently, "what betrayed him?" Sari sighed, fingers tracing a faded illustration of a crown entwined with thorns. Those closest to him, his council, his generals feared his growing power. They conspired in shadows, and in the end, he was abandoned in the very jungle he sought to command. The revelation struck Alina with a strange familiarity. She too felt the sting of isolation, the burden of a power not fully hers, yet impossible to relinquish. Her gaze dropped to the flower, its petals trembling ever so slightly. Days later, standing amidst the jungle ruins where Valon's reign had crumbled, Alina breathed in the heavy scent of moss and blossoms. The broken stones, overgrown with vines and speckled with flowers, whispered secrets long buried. A gust of wind stirred the leaves at her feet, carrying faint echoes of power and regret. She closed her eyes, imagining the crown once gleaming atop Velen's head, now just fragments beneath the jungle's reclaiming arms. "What does it mean for me?" she whispered, the question hanging in the humid air. Before she could dwell further, the bustling cacophony of the memory market pulled her back to the present. Morrow's voice cut through the clamor as he grabbed her arm, his eyes sharp. "Alina, you must be cautious. Factions are stirring, their eyes on the flower. This is more than history, now it's a battleground." The scent of exotic spices mingled with the tension as traders eyed her with suspicion and greed. Morrow's carved wooden talisman caught the fading light, a symbol of protection in a world where memories were weapons. That night, beneath a canopy of blooming petals in her private garden, Alina sought solace. The air was thick with floral fragrance, wrapping around her like a balm. She closed her eyes, the soft rustle of leaves syncing with her steady breath. The intertwined legacies of Velen and herself unfurled within her mind, pain and hope, destruction and renewal. She opened her eyes with a clarity that surprised her. The broken crown was not just a symbol of loss, but a call to mend what was fractured. As guardian of memory and life, she would bridge the chasms of the past and guide the Empire toward a future where shadows and light could coexist. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Alina felt the stirrings of purpose strong enough to withstand even the darkest memories. And as the petals around her shimmered softly in the moonlight, she knew the true test was yet to come. The night was far from over, and the Empire's secrets still whispered through the leaves. In a small clearing dappled with sunlight, Alina stood between Morrow and Ellis, the rare flower cradled gently in her hands. The petals, a delicate swirl of crimson and violet, pulsed faintly, as if alive, a heartbeat in the lush silence. "We cannot afford hesitation anymore," Alina said, her voice steady despite the storm of uncertainty within. "The flower's power is not just a weapon, it's a legacy. We must choose how to wield it." Her green eyes, reflecting the vibrant jungle around them, met Morrow's steady gaze first. Morrow shifted his weight, the carved wooden talisman at his neck catching the light. "I've seen what happens when power falls into the wrong hands. The memory traders grow bolder each day. If we don't act now, they'll take the flower and twist its memories into chains." His tone was pragmatic, but carried an unspoken bond, a promise to stand by Alina through whatever came. Ellis's pale fingers brushed a petal, her silver-vined hair cascading softly as she spoke in a voice that seemed to echo from somewhere beyond the clearing. "The dreamscapes show me paths, but they are fraught with shadows. To heal, we must first understand the depth of the wound. King Velen's memories are dark, but not without truth. If we bind them with care, we can weave a future that honors the past without repeating it." Alina nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her like a mantle. "Then we start today. We'll combine our knowledge, my botanical lore, Morrow's understanding of the Empire's undercurrents, and Ellis's dreamwalking to unlock the flower's full potential. Not for control, but for healing." The flower's glow intensified, its petals unfurling slowly, releasing a shimmer of light that danced like fireflies in the humid air. Alina reached out, channeling her botanical magic, and delicate threads of luminescent energy wove from the bloom, intertwining with the jungle's verdant canopy. The air hummed with possibility, a fragile promise of renewal. Morrow exhaled deeply, the tension in his broad shoulders easing slightly. "You carry more than just a flower, Alina. You carry the hope of all who have been silenced by forgetting, and the risk," she replied softly. "But I won't let that stop us." Ellis stepped closer, her eyes shimmering like moonlit petals. "Tonight, I will take you deeper into the dreamscape. There, we will seek the heart of the flower's magic and the Empire's future." As twilight deepened, the trio prepared for the journey ahead, bound by a blooming resolve that would challenge the shadows creeping ever closer. In the jungle's embrace, beneath the watchful eyes of ancient trees, Alina felt a stirring within, a cautious hope that even the darkest memories could be transformed when tended with care. The night was thick with whispers, but for the first time in a long time, those whispers spoke not only of fear, but of possibility. The path forward was uncertain, but Alina's heart steeled itself for the trials to come. The flowers' petals had begun to open, and with them, a new chapter for the Empire was ready to unfold. As the first stars blinked awake above, Alina caught Morrow's steady gaze and Ellis's serene smile, knowing that together they would face whatever darkness awaited, not as mere survivors, but as guardians of a fragile, blossoming hope. And somewhere, deep within the flower's glowing core, the soul of the forgotten king stirred, watching the dawn of change with eyes both haunted and hopeful. The jungle held its breath, and the story of memory, power, and redemption bloomed anew. Alina knelt before her centerpiece, the mystical flower that had become both her burden and her beacon. The petals shimmered faintly, a delicate dance of iridescent hues that seemed to shift between deep purples and vibrant greens, as though the very essence of the jungle was held within them. Carefully, she uncapped a vial of distilled floral essence, rare concoction. She had crafted over many nights and began to anoint the petals in slow, deliberate strokes. Each touch sent a ripple through the flower's glow, as if awakening dormant memories locked deep within its core. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. This flower was no ordinary specimen. It was the vessel of King Velen's soul, a tyrant whose legacy had haunted the Empire for centuries. Yet, here, in her hands, it held the potential to transform from a symbol of oppression into a living archive of truth. Alina's mind raced with the possibilities if she could weave together the botanical magic she understood so well with the ancient memory lore Ellis had taught her. Could she create a new way to preserve history, one that did not dominate or erase, but illuminated and healed? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft, ethereal voice. "The memories are not chains, Alina," Ellis whispered, stepping through the greenhouse door, her silver-vined hair shimmering in the low light. "They are threads waiting to be woven into something greater." Alina looked up, eyes meeting those of the Dreamwalker. Ellis's presence was calming, a steady current in the swirling storm of emotions. Together, they moved to a circle of flowering vines that Ellis had conjured from the dreamscape itself, their petals glowing with a light that seemed both otherworldly and deeply natural. "Watch," Ellis murmured, her hands weaving through the air as if plucking invisible strings. The vines responded, twisting and curling, their blossoms pulsing in time with the memories Alina had felt leaking from the flower. Each petal became a canvas, each vine a pathway, carrying fragments of history that shimmered like stars caught in a web. Alina reached out hesitantly and touched one of the glowing petals. Visions flooded her mind, scenes from the Empire's past she had only glimpsed in fragments. The fierce battles that had forged the jungle tribes into a single empire, the whispered betrayals that had led to Valen's downfall, the quiet moments of hope that had been buried beneath centuries of fear. But these memories were different now. They did not claw at her with pain or demand submission. Instead, they invited understanding, empathy, and reflection. "It's beautiful," Alina breathed, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "And powerful," Ellis agreed. "This is the way forward, to honor the past without being enslaved by it." Outside the greenhouse, Morrow stood watchful, his eyes sharp as ever. The memory market buzzed with its usual chaos traders, shouting prices, the clink of coins mingling with the hum of whispered deals. But Morrow's attention was elsewhere. He knew the dangers that lurked beneath the surface, the factions that would stop at nothing to claim the flower and its secrets. He felt a surge of protectiveness for Alina, the friend who had always been more than just a botanist. She was a beacon of hope in a world so often shrouded in shadows. Yet, even as he kept vigil, Morrow sensed the shifting tides whispers of new alliances, betrayals, and the ever-looming threat of violence. Back inside, Alina carefully lifted the emerging tapestry from its resting place. It was a living creation, woven from petals and vines infused with memory magic, glowing softly with an inner light that seemed to breathe. The tapestry told a story not of kings and conquerors alone, but of the people, the land, the intertwined fates of all who had shaped the empire. She looked to Ellis and Morrow, her companions and anchors in this uncertain journey. "This is only the beginning," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of doubt still swirling within. "If we can share this with the Empire, if we can change how people see their past, maybe we can change our future." Ellis nodded, her eyes reflecting the tapestry's glow. "Memory is a garden," she said softly, "and we are its gardeners." But as the three stood united in the greenhouse, a shadow flickered beyond the market's edges, watching, waiting. The new path Alina had forged was radiant with promise, but it was also a beacon that would draw both light and darkness alike. The weaving of memory and life had begun, and with it, the fragile hope of a jungle empire awakening to its true story. Alina spent the following days deep in experimentation, blending her botanical knowledge with the mystical arts that Ellis imparted. Each attempt brought new revelations, how the flower's essence could be coaxed into living threads that pulsed with history, how memories could be arranged not as chains, but as tapestries of shared experience. The process was painstaking, demanding not only skill but profound emotional resilience. The tyrant's soul still whispered in the petals, a constant reminder of the delicate balance she had to maintain. Morrow's presence was a steady comfort. He helped navigate the political undercurrents that swirled around their work, warning of factions eager to seize the flower's power. Together, they strategized ways to protect their creation. Knowing that the tapestry was more than a scientific breakthrough, was a symbol of change that threatened entrenched powers. One evening, as twilight bathed the jungle in hues of gold and violet, Ellis led Alina into the dreamscape once more. This time, the memories wove themselves into a vast garden of light and shadow, where each flower held a story, each vine a connection between past and present. Alina reached out, her fingers brushing petals that sang with voices long silenced, and felt a profound empathy for the Empire's forgotten souls. "This is the true power of memory," Ellis whispered. "Not to dominate or erase, but to heal and unite." Alina's heart swelled with cautious hope. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but in this moment, she glimpsed a future where the Empire might finally reconcile with its past, where memory was a gift rather than a weapon. As dawn broke, painting the sky with streaks of rose and amber, Alina knew her journey was only beginning. The tapestry would speak for those who could no longer tell their stories, weaving together petals and memories into a legacy of light amid the jungle's shadows. And in that fragile dawn, the memory weaver found her true purpose. She moved cautiously, her senses alert to every broken twig and whispered sound as she approached the edge of a village recently scarred by violence. The air was thick with the acrid temps of smoke mingled with the faint, bittersweet scent of crushed petals flowers, trampled in haste and fear. Villagers, faces drawn and eyes wide with terror, huddled in small groups amid the ruins of their homes, their voices low and trembling with uncertainty. Alina's heart tightened as she stepped forward, her gaze falling on a child's small hand clutching a wilting blossom, its once vibrant colors dulled by dust and neglect. The fragile flower seemed a cruel mirror to the lives shattered around it. She knelt beside the child, offering a gentle smile, though her own uncertainty gnawed at her. "We must find a way to stop this," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Nearby, Morrow's presence was a steady anchor. His brow furrowed deeply as he exchanged terse words with a group of villagers desperate for protection. "They're caught between factions," Morrow said grimly, his voice low but firm. "Neither side cares for their safety, they see only power and profit." The memory market was no sanctuary either. In a cramped stall, lit by flickering oil lamps, Morrow confronted Doran. The air between them was electric, with barely concealed hostility. "You think you can just take the flower and everything it represents?" Morrow challenged, his voice a harsh whisper. Doran's smile was cold, predatory. "The flower is a commodity, like any other. Control it, and you control the Empire's future." Their confrontation was cut short by the sudden arrival of Alina, her face set with determination. "This isn't just about power," she interjected, her voice steady despite the tension. "It's about the people, those whose lives are being torn apart by this endless struggle." Doran's eyes narrowed, calculating. Idealism won't protect them, only strength will. That night, under the shroud of towering ancient trees, Alina followed Ellis into the dreamscape. The air shimmered with otherworldly light as twisting vines encircled them, glowing flowers wilting and darkening as shadows crept across their petals. Ellis's voice was calm but urgent. "The Empire's turmoil is reflected here. The vines represent the tangled loyalties and conflicts that choke the land. You must understand this if you are to find a way through." Alina reached out, her fingers brushing a fragile blossom that seemed to pulse faintly with light. "Can these vines be untangled?" Ellis nodded slowly, "But it will take courage and sacrifice." Days later, in the modest hut of Sori, the village elder's words carried the weight of centuries. Her eyes, deep pools of knowledge, met Alina's with a mixture of sorrow and hope. "The Empire has always been a tapestry of delicate threads," Sori said, her voice trembling slightly. "Each thread a story, a memory, a life. But now, those threads are fraying. You hold the flower that binds them, Alina. Be careful, it can heal or destroy." Alina absorbed the elder's warning, feeling the immense burden of her role. The conflicts she faced were no longer abstract struggles for power, they were battles that scarred real people, real lives. Her mission was more complicated, more urgent than ever. Back in the jungle's heart, Alina convened a meeting with Morrow and Ellis, their faces etched with fatigue but alight with determination. "We cannot let this spiral further," Alina said. "The factions will tear the Empire apart if we don't find common ground." Morrow nodded. "We have to reach out to the villagers, build trust. They're tired of being pawns." Ellis's gaze was distant, yet focused. "And we must continue to explore the dreamscape. The answers lie there hidden in the memories we fear to face." Together, they began weaving a fragile plan, one that required patience, empathy, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Alina knew the path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but the alternative was unthinkable. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the jungle in hues of fiery orange and deep violet, Alina stood at the edge of the village once more. The tangled vines of conflict had grown thick and choking, but in her heart, a seed of hope took root. She would fight for the Empire's future, not with brute force, but with the delicate strength of understanding and unity. The night air was alive with the chorus of unseen creatures, a reminder that life persisted even in the darkest shadows. And somewhere, deep within the flower she guarded, the petals whispered of change, waiting for the moment to bloom. But as Alina turned to leave, a sharp rustle behind her made her pause. Eyes gleamed in the darkness, watchful, calculating. The tangled vines were not the only danger lurking in the jungle's depths, and the next move could mean all the difference between salvation and ruin. The air was thick with humidity, the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers mingling in a heavy perfume. Alina's fingers trembled slightly as she cradled the flower, its petals shimmering faintly in the flickering light of a single oil lamp. Morrow's expression was unreadable, his usual confident demeanor shadowed by something unspoken. "Why didn't you tell me?" Alina's voice barely rose above a whisper, yet it carried the weight of years of friendship and trust. He looked away, the carved talisman he always carried catching the light and casting strange shadows on the worn wooden floor. "I had no choice," he said finally, voice thick with regret. "They threatened my family, Alina. I tried to protect them." Betrayal settled in Alina's chest like a cold stone. The flower, the symbol of hope and reconciliation, now felt like a fragile petal torn by the harsh wind of deception. She struggled to reconcile the Morrow she knew with the man who had bartered their future for safety. Meanwhile, the memory market beyond the hut was a maelstrom of noise and motion. Traders shouted over the clamor, their voices sharp and urgent. As Doran's men moved with ruthless efficiency, their eyes fixed on the flower's rumored power, the clash of ideals and greed painted the crowded stalls in chaos, the scent of crushed leaves and spices thickening the air. Alina sensed the shifting tides. Her sanctuary was no longer safe. With a heavy heart, she slipped away from the hut, the moonlight filtering through the dense canopy, casting silver patterns on the jungle floor. The rustle of leaves and distant calls of night creatures became a somber soundtrack to her solitude. Her mind wrestled with doubt, sorrow, and the faintest spark of determination. In a quiet clearing, far from the noise and treachery, Alina met with Ellis. The Dreamwalker's pale hair shimmered like silver vines in the dying light of dusk. They sat beside a still pool, its surface reflecting the deep greens of the jungle and the fiery hues of the setting sun. "The path ahead is tangled," Ellis murmured, her voice steady despite the weight it carried. "But within these shadows, seeds of renewal can still grow." Alina nodded slowly, feeling the fragile tendrils of hope begin to take root amidst the devastation. The betrayal had fractured her world, yet it had also ignited a fierce resolve. To protect the flower, to protect the memories it held, she would need to forge new alliances and embrace the uncertain future with open eyes. The petals in the wind whispered promises of change, and Alina was ready to answer their call. The oppressive humidity of the late afternoon clung to Alina's skin as she paced beneath the canopy of towering jungle trees. Every leaf seemed to murmur secrets, every shadow concealing unseen watchers. Her thoughts churned relentlessly, replaying the bitter confrontation with Morrow. How had trust, so carefully built over years, shattered so easily? The memory of his faltering gaze haunted her, no longer the steadfast companion, but a man torn between loyalty and fear. She clutched the flower close, feeling its subtle pulse beneath her palm. The petals, once a symbol of fragile hope, now felt like a battleground, each fold hiding a story of pain and power. Determined not to be undone by betrayal, Alina sought out the hidden alcoves of the memory market. Here, the air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and the sharp temps of crushed leaves. Traders bartered memories as if they were gems, each recollection a precious commodity. Doran's shadow loomed large. The memory trader's cold eyes gleamed with greed as he orchestrated a merciless siege on the flowers keepers. His men moved with calculated precision, their footsteps muffled by the jungle's damp floor, but no less threatening. Alina's heart pounded with urgency. She and her remaining allies scrambled to defend what little ground they held. The clash was fierce voices raised in alarm, the rustle of torn leaves and the sharp crack of snapped branches punctuated the struggle. Yet amidst the chaos, Alina found clarity. The fight was not just for a flower or a soul trapped within its petals, it was a battle for the Empire's very memory. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of crimson and gold, Alina retreated once more to the solitude of the jungle's heart. There, in the quiet embrace of nature, she allowed herself a moment to grieve the broken bonds and to steel her spirit against the trials ahead. The petals in the wind were scattered now, but from their fall, new growth could arise. For Alina, the journey was far from over, it was only just beginning. Here, in the dreamscape, colors bloomed with an intensity that defied waking logic. Petals glowed with iridescent light, drifting lazily through a sky painted in twilight hues of violet and gold. The scent of jasmine and damp earth wove through the atmosphere, mingling with whispers that seemed to float on the breeze, whispers, both inviting and warning. Alice's silver-vined hair floated around her like a halo, her eyes calm pools reflecting endless depths. "We are close," she murmured, her voice a gentle thread pulling Alina deeper into the surreal forest of memory and magic. The advisors gather where the soul is tethered. Alina's heart hammered as they approached a clearing where spectral figures coalesced like smoke caught in sunlight. The advisors were shaped from shifting petals and shadows, their forms elegant yet unsettling, faces half hidden beneath floral masks carved from twilight. Their voices rose in an ancient chant, a weaving of syllables that pulsed through the dreamscape like a living heartbeat binding. King Velen's fractured soul tightly within the core of the mystical flower. This ritual, Alice explained softly, is what keeps his essence anchored, preventing him from fading into oblivion, but also imprisoning him in torment. Alina watched, mesmerized and horrified, as the advisors' voices entwined with the petals, which seemed to pulse and throb like a wounded heart. She could feel the oppressive weight of centuries, the cruelty, the fear, the unfulfilled ambitions, all trapped in this delicate prison. Drawing a steadying breath, Alina stepped forward, her hands trembling but resolute. She placed her palms against the glowing petals, sensing the surge of conflicting forces, darkness that threatened to consume, and a fragile hope flickering beneath. The flower responded, its pulse synchronizing with her own heartbeat. "You seek to break the chains," a voice whispered, not from the advisors, but from the shadows themselves. King Velen's presence manifested before her, regal and terrible, woven from petals and shadow with eyes like burning embers. But to do so is to risk everything. Alina met his gaze, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. "I do not seek to unleash you to destroy the flower's power, but to free it from your corruption. The Empire deserves that much." The advisor's chant faltered as a shimmering vine, delicate as a spider's thread and luminous with silver leaves, began to unravel the ritual's core. Alice's hand found Alina's, lending strength and calm. Together they traced the vine's path, following it to the heart of the binding magic. In that moment, the dreamscape held its breath. Alina whispered a promise, a vow to break the chains that had bound both king and empire in a cycle of violence and forgetting. The vine's gentle unraveling echoed through the dreamscape like the first breeze of dawn, stirring petals and shadows alike. As the ritual's grip loosened, Alina felt a wave of exhaustion and exhilaration wash over her. The path ahead was perilous, but for the first time, she glimpsed a way to reshape the past's haunting hold on the present. "We must prepare," Alice said, her voice both warning and hope. "This is only the beginning." Alina nodded, determination blazing in her green eyes. The dreamscape's heartbeat slowed, but its rhythm promised change, fragile, uncertain, but real. And with that fragile hope, she stepped back through the veil, ready to face the challenges that awaited beyond the realm of dreams. Night deepened over the jungle empire, but Alina's mind was alight with the visions and voices of the dreamscape. The flower rested on her table, its petals now seeming to pulse with a softer light, as if sensing the unraveling ritual within. Moro's warning echoed in her thoughts, the dangers real and looming. But so too was the promise she had glimpsed, a chance to transform memory's cruel grip into a force for healing. Her journey through the dreamscape had revealed the fragile threads that held the tyrant's soul captive. And with that knowledge came power and risk. Alina knew the path forward demanded courage beyond science or magic alone. It required a heart willing to embrace both darkness and light, past and future, pain and hope. And so, as the jungle whispered its ancient songs beneath the moon, Alina prepared to weave a new destiny one petal at a time. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flora, a subtle perfume that seemed to pulse with the life of the forest itself. Ellis sat cross-legged among a circle of iridescent petals, their soft luminescence casting a gentle light that danced across her pale skin and silver-vined hair. Alina watched in quiet reverence as Ellis began to speak, her voice a whisper woven with the weight of ancient secrets and fragile hope. "You see," Ellis began, tracing a delicate finger along the edge of a glowing bloom. "Our people have long carried the burden of memories, those that suffocate, those that liberate. I am descended from the memory guardians, but even we are not immune to the shadows of the past." The words hung between them like a fragile thread, pulled taut by the gravity of unspoken histories. Alina's green eyes searched Ellis's face, seeing reflected there the same blend of pain and purpose that had stirred within herself since the flower first came into her possession. "I once sought to bury those memories, to shield myself from the echoes of cruelty etched into the Empire's soul." Ellis continued, her gaze distant as if peering through time itself. But the dreamscape revealed a different truth, that redemption is not found in forgetting, but in embracing the fractures and weaving them into a new tapestry of healing. Alina nodded slowly, the words resonating deep within her. The Tyrant King's memories, with all their darkness and complexity, were not merely curses to be destroyed, but threads to be understood and transformed. The flower in her hands pulsed faintly, its petals trembling as if alive with the promise of change. As Ellis recounted her journey through dreamscapes haunted by lost souls, Alina felt the veil between their worlds thin. They stepped beyond the physical grove into a realm where memories bloomed like fragile petals, each glowing softly with the light of forgotten pain and hope. The spectral garden was a sanctuary of shadows and illumination, where Alina confronted the specters of the Empire's past and the possibility of forgiveness. "This is where the roots of redemption take hold," Ellis said, her voice steady but tender. "Not in erasing what was, but in planting new seeds that grow from understanding and empathy." The dreamscape shimmered, the flowers light weaving intricate patterns around them, echoing the delicate balance between destruction and renewal. Alina's heart swelled with a cautious optimism, the fears that had once threatened to consume her now tempered by the strength of shared purpose. When dawn broke over the jungle empire, the first golden rays kissed the verdant canopy, igniting the petals in Alina's hands with a warm glow. Standing beside Ellis on a ridge overlooking the awakening forest, Alina felt a profound shift within herself. The burdens of the past were no longer chains, but roots deep, tangled, and vital, nourishing a future yet to be written. "We are the guardians now," Alina said softly, her voice carrying the weight of newfound resolve, not just of memories, but of life itself. Elis smiled, the petals around her stirring in a gentle breeze that seemed to carry the whispered blessings of the jungle. Together, we will heal what was broken. As the Empire stirred beneath the rising sun, Alina's journey of redemption had truly begun, rooted in the past, reaching toward the light and blooming with the promise of hope. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges that would test the limits of her courage and compassion. Yet, in this moment of quiet transformation, Alina embraced the delicate power of memory, the petals of the forgotten, and the enduring strength of a heart willing to forgive. Her story was no longer one of dread and domination, but of delicate balance, where the shadows of yesterday nourished the blossoms of tomorrow. And with each breath, the jungle itself seemed to pulse in harmony, echoing the rhythm of a world on the cusp of renewal. But as the light deepened and the flowers' glow intensified, a whispered question lingered in the air. How far was Alina willing to go to protect this fragile hope? And what sacrifices awaited her in the shadows yet to come? The roots of redemption stretched deep, and the journey was only beginning. The rare flower rested on the wooden table before her, its petals slowly unfurling in an unsteady, deliberate rhythm. Each movement whispered secrets, fragments of memories carried on a breath of wind, shadows of a past that refused to die. Alina's green eyes, sharp and reflective like the jungle canopy, remained fixed on the blossom, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached out to touch the delicate surface. The flower's glow intensified, bathing the room in a soft, otherworldly light that flickered like the pulse of a distant heartbeat. From deep within the petals came a low murmur, a chorus of voices, both haunting and compelling. It was the voice of King Velen, the forgotten tyrant whose soul had been trapped within this living vessel. His presence was a dark tide against the gentle beauty of the flower, a storm of power and cruelty woven into its core. Alina felt the weight of his gaze piercing and relentless, seeping into her thoughts, stirring a tempest of fear and fascination. She swallowed hard, heart pounding in her chest. The decision before her was monumental. To destroy this flower, this vessel of ancient pain and power, would mean erasing a piece of the Empire's history, painful though it was. Yet to preserve it risked unleashing the tyrant's shadow upon the present, threatening to engulf not only her identity but the fragile peace that had settled over the jungle empire. Her mind raced with memories her parents lost to the ruthless memory traders, the countless stories of suffering she'd uncovered, the whispered warnings from Morrow and Elis. And yet, beneath the fear, a stubborn spark of hope flickered. In the stillness, a soft voice broke through her reverie. Alina, Elis's ethereal tone drifted from the doorway, her silver-vined hair shimmering in the dim light. The flower is not just a prison, but a seed. Within it lies the power to transform, to reconcile what was broken. But you must be willing to face the darkness without turning away. Alina nodded slowly, drawing strength from the Dreamwalker's calm presence. I know what risks I face, she said, voice steady despite the quiver in her soul. But I cannot let fear dictate the future. This flower, this tyrant's soul must become a force for healing, not destruction. Elis smiled faintly, stepping forward to join her by the table. Then, let us begin. Together, they prepared the ritual, weaving ancient floral magic with the botanical knowledge Alina had painstakingly gathered. Petals from the flower shimmered like liquid starlight as they danced through the air, forming intricate patterns that pulsed with spectral energy. The laboratory seemed to dissolve around them, replaced by a swirling dreamscape garden where colors bled into one another, and the scent of countless blossoms hung heavy with meaning. Alina reached out, hands trembling but resolute, to the flower's core. The tyrant's presence surged forward, a dark tempest wrapped in regal petals and shadowy tendrils. His piercing eyes locked with hers, challenging, demanding. For a moment, the weight of centuries pressed down, threatening to crush her spirit and steal her identity. But Alina clung to the memories of those she loved, the faces of her lost parents, the loyalty of Morrow, and the guiding light of Ellis. With a cry that echoed through the dreamscape and the waking world, she poured her will into the flower. The petals exploded outward in a radiant burst of light and color, a vortex of sound and sensation that swept away the tyrant's shadow. His form wavered, then shattered into a cascade of glowing seeds, each one a promise of renewal rather than ruin. Breathless, Alina collapsed to her knees as the garden round her softened into a gentle dawn. The ritual had succeeded not through destruction, but through transformation, yet the battle was far from over. Outside the dreamscape, Morrow's urgent voice cut through the quiet. "Alina, you must hurry. Doran and his forces are closing in." She rose, strength renewed but aware of the peril that still lurked. The flower's power was no longer a curse to fear, but a beacon of hope to protect. And Alina, once a cautious botanist, was now a guardian of memory and life, ready to face whatever storms the Empire would bring. Her journey was just beginning. The sun dipped low behind the tangled canopy as Alina and her companions prepared for the challenges ahead. The blooming of courage had marked a turning point, not an end, but a new beginning. With the flower's power transformed and her resolve hardened, Alina stepped forward into the uncertain future, her heart beating with the rhythms of the jungle and the echoes of a forgotten king. What new paths would unfold? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. The petals of the past would no longer wither in silence, but bloom in the light of hope. Beneath the towering canopy, where ancient trees stretched their gnarled limbs toward the stars, a small clearing held the fragile heart of resistance. Alina Tarr stood among the shadows, her dark braided hair catching the faint glow of lantern light as she exchanged hurried words with Morrow and Ellis. The air was thick with humidity, heavy with the scent of damp earth and crushed leaves, but beneath it lay the sharper tang of anticipation and unspoken fear. "They're coming," Morrow murmured, his eyes flicking toward the jungle's edge where the faintest sounds of movement stirred. His stocky frame was tense, fingers clutching the carved wooden talisman that had accompanied him through countless trials. Doran and his people won't wait long. They want that flower, and they won't stop for anything. Ellis, her pale face illuminated by the lantern's flicker, nodded slowly. Her silver-vined hair shimmered like moonlight caught in petals. And the dreamscape stirs. King Velen senses the tide turning. His advisors whisper like shadows, gathering strength. Alina drew a steadying breath, her green eyes reflecting the flickering flames. The mystical flower rested carefully in a vessel beside her, its petals faintly glowing with an ethereal light, as if breathing with a life of its own. The weight she carried was immense, not just the physical burden of the flower, but the legacy entwined within its delicate form. The soul of a forgotten tyrant king, a presence both cruel and visionary, pulsed within its core. "We have to be ready," Alina said, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts raging within. "This isn't just about possession. If Velen's spirit breaks free, the Empire could unravel." Morrow's jaw clenched. "Then we hold the line, whatever it takes." As the night deepened, the trio made final preparations. Ellis wove strands of ancient floral magic around the clearing, petals blooming in spectral light, forming protective wards that shimmered like a veil. Morrow coordinated with trusted allies in the surrounding villages, setting traps and watch points. Alina, meanwhile, tended to the flower, whispering softly as if coaxing the tyrant's soul to calm. But even as they worked, the dreamscape realm, where memory and reality intertwined, trembled with unrest. Far from the physical world, a tempest of swirling shadows and vibrant petals churned violently. King Velen's spectral advisors, ghostly figures woven of light and darkness, gathered in ominous council. Their voices rose in a haunting chorus, urging their master's spirit toward resurgence and dominion. Within that shifting landscape, Velen himself took form, a regal figure draped in petals and shadows, eyes blazing with fierce ambition and ancient pain. The forgotten tyrant's will surged, aching to reclaim the empire that had cast him into oblivion. Yet the dreamscape was no longer his alone. Alina's presence, her growing mastery of floral mysticism and memory lore, challenged his grip. Back in the waking world, dawn broke over the jungle, casting golden light across the verdant canopy and awakening a restless market below. The memory market, the vibrant heart of the Empire's economy, transformed into a battlefield as factions converged. Traders and agents moved swiftly, their faces masks of determination and greed, voices raised in urgent negotiation and threat. Doran, the ruthless memory trader, prowled among the stalls, dark eyes scanning for the flower's hidden location. His ambition was a blade honed sharp, his intentions clear: seize the flower and leverage its power to dominate the memory trade and, by extension, the empire itself. Alina, Morrow, and Ellis moved through the chaos with purpose, weaving through crowds thick with the scent of crushed flowers, smoke, and sweat. Every step was a gamble. Every glance could hide a threat. The fragile piece of the market cracked under pressure as rival factions clashed, shouts echoing against the vibrant tapestry of memory vials and botanical wonders. At the market's edge, Alina paused, feeling the weight of the moment settle deep within her chest. Above, the jungle canopy stirred with the songs of awakening birds. Yet beneath that natural symphony lay the discord of human ambition and ancient spirits. Her hand brushed the petals of the flower concealed beneath her cloak, a reminder of the delicate balance she must maintain. The storm was gathering, both in the physical realm and in the dreamscape's shifting mists. Alina's thoughts raced, grappling with the enormity of what was to come. Could she hold the disparate forces at bay? Could she protect the flower's power from those who would wield it for destruction? And, most daunting of all, could she resist the tyrant's soul seeking to consume her very being? Her gaze lifted to the horizon, where the first light painted the sky in hues of pink and gold. The jungle empire stretched endlessly, a living mosaic of secrets and histories, waiting to be remembered or forgotten. Alina's heart steeled with determination, her voice barely a whisper to the waking world. This ends now. The gathering storm was no longer a distant threat, it was here, and its fury would shape the fate of all. As the sun rose higher, the intertwined destinies of Alina, Velen, and the Empire's myriad factions hurtled toward their inevitable collision. The fragile threads of memory and power taut and trembling, and in that charged silence before the tempest, the question remained: who would emerge from the storm as guardian, and who would be lost to the shadows forever? Alina Tar stood at the heart of a clearing, the rare flower cradled carefully in her hands, petals trembling as if echoing the tumult within her own mind. Around her, shadows shifted, some natural, others spectral, whispering the weight of history and the peril of what was to come. From the depths of the flower's core, a presence stirred, coalescing into a form both beautiful and terrifying. King Velen, the forgotten tyrant, manifested before her not as the flesh and blood ruler of ancient times, but as a regal silhouette woven from petals and shadow, eyes blazing with the cold fire of ambition. His voice, a rustling of leaves and a chill wind, echoed inside Alina's head. "You cannot resist what is bound to you, Alina. Your mind is but a garden where I will root and bloom anew." Alina's breath caught, the tendrils of his will pressing against the fragile walls of her consciousness. Yet, within her surged a wellspring of defiance. She clutched the flower tighter, feeling the pulse of life woven through its petals, a complex symphony of memory, pain, and power. Drawing on every lesson learned, every secret whispered by the jungle's flora, she began to chant softly, weaving words of ancient botanical magic taught by Ellis. Vines of silver light spiraled from her fingertips, encircling the tyrant's shadow like chains of living growth. "You do not own me," Alina declared, voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. The petals around her shimmered, and the dreamscape bent and twisted, the boundary between reality and memory dissolving into a kaleidoscope of colors and scents. She envisioned the jungle's roots, deep and resilient, anchoring her spirit firmly to the earth, resisting the invasive darkness. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed from the clearing's edge. Morrow appeared, his sun-kissed skin gleaming under the moonlight, clutching a carved wooden talisman that glowed faintly with protective magic. "Alina, remember who you are," he urged, his voice carrying the weight of years of friendship and trust. His presence was a tether to the tangible world, a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. Ellis emerged beside her, pale and ethereal, weaving intricate sigils in the air with hands that moved like silver vines. "Harness the flower's song," she whispered, her voice a soothing balm amid the chaos. "Transform the pain into strength, the past into a promise." Together they formed a triad of resistance against the tyrant's creeping influence. Alina's chants grew louder, her magic blooming outward in a cascade of glowing petals that danced like fireflies caught in a gentle breeze. The tyrant's form writhed, petals unraveling and reforming as he struggled to maintain his hold. Visions flooded Alina's mind, the brutal unification of jungle tribes, the echoes of fear and suffering, but also moments of fragile beauty flowers blooming defiantly in the ruins of old battles, a child's laughter carried on the wind. She clung to these memories, weaving them into her spell, transforming the tyrant's power from domination into reconciliation. The battle reached a crescendo as the first light of dawn pierced the canopy, casting golden fingers across the clearing. With a final surge, Alina released a burst of floral magic that shattered the tyrant's shadow into a cascade of glowing petals. They drifted down, settling gently on the jungle floor like snow, dissolving into the soil where new life would grow. Breathless, Alina collapsed to her knees, the flower resting quietly in her palms, no longer a vessel of tyranny but a symbol of hope. Morrow stepped forward, his eyes filled with relief and admiration. "You did it," he said simply. Ellis smiled softly, the silver vines in her hair catching the dawn's light. "The night has passed. Now comes the dawn of memory and healing." But even as peace settled over the clearing, a question lingered in Alina's heart. How to wield this fragile power wisely, so the cycle of pain would not repeat but instead give rise to a future where past and present coexisted in harmony. The jungle stirred with new life, petals shimmering in the morning light, and Alina knew her journey was far from over. Yet, in that moment, surrounded by friends and the whispering leaves, she dared to hope. The night had fallen, but petals against the darkness had bloomed with them, the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The battle had drained Alina beyond exhaustion, yet her mind remained sharp, alive with the resonance of the flowers, magic, and the echoes of the tyrant's fading presence. As the sun climbed higher, painting the jungle with warm hues, she rose, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders anew. Morrow and Ellis flanked her, their solidarity a quiet strength, but Alina's thoughts turned inward. The tyrant's memories still lingered faintly in her mind, fragments of fear, visions of power, and moments of vulnerability. She realized the true challenge lay ahead, not just resisting possession, but transforming the legacy of pain into something meaningful. "We must be vigilant," Ellis said, her voice calm yet firm. "The flower's power is immense, and others will seek to claim it." She gestured toward the dense jungle, where distant sounds hinted at the gathering of factions still hungry for control. "Then we prepare," Alina replied, determination stealing her voice. "Not to wield power for dominion, but to protect and to heal." Morrow nodded. "Together, we'll face whatever comes. The Empire's future depends on it." As they moved forward, the petals of the flower shimmered softly, a living testament to the struggle just endured and the hope yet to be realized. Alina knew the path would be fraught with peril, but for the first time, she felt ready to walk it not as a victim of memory, but as its guardian. And so, beneath the watchful eyes of the jungle's ancient trees, the battle for the soul of the Empire continued, carried on the petals against the night. The once tarnished grounds had begun to pulse with the quiet, radiant life, petals of every hue unfurling under the soft caress of twilight. Each flower seemed to hum with memory, a living mosaic of the Empire's past sorrows and future promises. The mystical flower at the heart of the garden glowed faintly, its petals no longer a prison but a beacon, a symbol of hope reclaimed from shadow. Alina knelt, her fingers brushing tenderly through the verdant leaves, feeling the pulse of life beneath the surface. The battle had left scars both visible and unseen, but the garden's slow revival mirrored the fragile healing of the Empire itself. The memories once wielded as weapons now wove together in a delicate tapestry of understanding and empathy. Here, in this sacred space, the past was neither erased nor exalted, but embraced. Morrow approached quietly, his heavy footsteps muted against the moss-covered stones. His sun-tanned face bore the lines of hardship, but his eyes held steady warmth and resolve. "It's hard to believe," he murmured, "that this place was once a battlefield." Alina smiled softly, the corners of her green eyes crinkling with quiet joy. The garden remembers Morrow, not just the pain, but the healing too. They stood side by side, the ruins of the memory market visible in the distant, silent witnesses to the Empire's tumultuous past. The air was thick with the scent of crushed petals and earth, remnants of conflict giving way to renewal. "People will be watching," Morrow said, his voice low but steady. "They'll want to see what this means." "We'll show them," Alina replied, her voice firm with newfound conviction. "Not just what it means, but what it can become." Nearby, Ellis moved gracefully among a small gathering of villagers and former memory traders. Her silver-vined hair caught the last light of day as she led them in a ritual of healing, her hands weaving floral magic that intertwined with the shared memories of those present. The circle pulsed with energy, a collective breath of renewal that bridged the spiritual and the tangible. Alina watched the scene unfold, feeling the weight of her new role settle upon her shoulders, not as a conqueror or a keeper of secrets, but as a guardian of memory and life. The Empire was fragile, its history stained yet rich, and it was her charge to ensure that memory would no longer be a weapon but a gift. Her thoughts were interrupted by a shadowy figure approaching from the edge of the garden. Doran, the relentless memory trader, stopped a respectful distance away. His sharp eyes, so often filled with greed and cunning, now reflected a reluctant contemplation. "You've changed things," he said quietly, his voice edged with something close to admiration. "I underestimated you, Alina." She met his gaze steadily, the tension between them softened by the tangible peace growing around them. "The Empire needs healing, not more division." Doran nodded slowly, then turned toward the jungle's edge where the dense foliage swallowed the setting sun. "Perhaps there's hope yet," he muttered before disappearing into the shadows. As night deepened, the garden thrummed with life and possibility. Alina lingered a moment longer, breathing in the mingled scents of earth and blossom, memory and renewal. The journey ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges. But for the first time in many moons, she felt the fragile certainty of dawn. The garden had been reclaimed, and with it, the heart of the Empire. But even as peace settled over the land, Alina knew the delicate balance she had forged would be tested anew. The past, after all, was never truly gone. It lived on in every petal, every whispered memory, waiting for the day it might bloom again. She rose, determination blazing quietly in her green eyes. "We begin anew," she whispered to the night, "and this time we remember." Alina stood at the heart of the gathering, her fingers gently cradling the flower, a slender vine of delicate petals that shimmered faintly with an inner luminescence. Around her, villagers of all ages had assembled, their faces a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and cautious anticipation. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine, mingling with the low hum of whispered conversations. "Today," Alina began, her voice steady though tinged with the tremor of reverence, "we begin to see not only with our eyes, but with our hearts. This flower, once a vessel of a tyrant's soul, now holds the memories of our past not as chains, but as seeds for renewal." She raised the flower slowly, and the petals began to unfurl, each one glowing softly. Within their translucent depths, flickering images appeared, scenes from the Empire's history, moments both beautiful and brutal. A child's laughter echoed faintly, followed by the clash of distant war drums. A lush jungle blossomed and withered in moments. Faces, long forgotten, emerged and faded like mist. The crowd fell silent, eyes wide, breaths held. Even the skeptical elders exchanged glances, their usual reserve softened by the undeniable power of the living history before them. Morrow stood close by, his rugged features softened by a rare, hopeful smile. He caught Alina's gaze and nodded, a silent affirmation of the path they had chosen. Around them, villagers tentatively stepped forward, reaching out to touch the glowing petals. As they did, faint whispers of memories brushed against their minds, fragments of stories once hidden beneath layers of fear and forgetting. "It feels like the jungle itself is telling us its secrets," murmured a young woman, her eyes misty with newfound understanding. Later, beneath the sheltering boughs of ancient trees, Ellis led a group of villagers through a shared dreamscape. Their bodies rested on woven mats, but their spirits soared amid swirling petals and shimmering colors. Here, the memories within the flower bloomed into living visions, villagers rising and falling, laughter and sorrow intertwined like vines, the past and present entwined in a dance of light and shadow. "Remember," Ellis whispered, her silver hair drifting like mist, "only by facing the past can we heal the wounds it left." Back in the village, Sari sat beside Alina, her lined face illuminated by the soft glow of a lantern. "Our people have long buried their memories in silence," she said, voice steady despite the weight of centuries. "But the seeds of renewal lie in the soil of remembrance, If we nurture them, we may grow a future worthy of our ancestors' dreams. Alina absorbed Sari's words, feeling the fragile hope taking root within her. This was more than science, more than magic. It was a calling to mend the fractures in the Empire's soul. Yet, even as the flower's light spread, shadows lingered. Whispers of dissent stirred among those who feared change, who saw the flower's power as a threat to their dominion. Alina knew this was only the beginning of a longer struggle, delicate balance between illumination and darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the jungle sky in hues of rose and gold, Alina stood once more before the gathered crowd. Her heart swelled with a mixture of fear and determination. "The past is no longer a weight to bear alone," she declared. "Together we will tend these memories, and from their petals weave a future where all can bloom." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, a fragile but undeniable promise of change. And somewhere deep within the flower, the soul of King Velen stirred not with malice, but with a quiet hope that even the darkest legacies might one day find redemption. The journey was far from over, but beneath the endless canopy, amidst the whispers of leaves and petals, a new dawn was beginning to bloom. Alina Tar stood at the center of the clearing, her robes embroidered with intricate floral patterns that seemed to shimmer with life under the dappled light. Around her, the dense foliage rustled gently in the warm breeze, carrying the rich, earthy scent of wet soil and blooming flowers. This was no ordinary moment. It was the beginning of a new chapter for the Jungle Empire, a moment where science and mysticism intertwined in harmony. Alina knelt carefully, her fingers brushing the dark earth as she planted a small, delicate blossom, one of the rare flowers imbued with the memory magic she had spent years understanding. The petals glowed faintly with a soft inner light, a sign that the memories of the past were alive within it, waiting to be shared with the world in a gentle embrace rather than a harsh dominion. She felt a profound connection to the fragile life taking root beneath her hands, a symbol of hope and remembrance. Behind her, footsteps approached softly. Morrow, ever vigilant and steady, emerged from the shadows of the trees. His sun-tanned skin glistened with sweat from a day spent navigating the Empire's complex memory markets, and his carved wooden talisman swung lightly from his neck. "You're really doing it?" he said quietly, a mixture of pride and concern in his voice. Alina smiled faintly but did not turn away from the flower. "It's more than just a flower, Morrow. It's a keeper of stories, of pain, of triumph, of truth. This is the future we need to build, one where the Empire remembers but does not suffer under the weight of the past." Morrow nodded, his gaze drifting to the dense jungle beyond. "It won't be easy. There are still those who want to control the memories, to use them as weapons. But you're not alone anymore." Ellis appeared then, her presence like a soft breeze through the leaves. Her pale skin and silver vine hair caught the fading light, petals clinging to her cloak like whispers of forgotten dreams. "The dreamscape has shown me the path," she said, her voice both gentle and resolute. "The memories are alive, but they are meant to heal, not to harm. Your role is vital, Alina. You must be both scientist and guardian." Together, the three of them moved toward the village elder's home, a sturdy structure woven from wood and vines, filled with the scent of ancient herbs and the wisdom of countless seasons. Inside, Sari sat, surrounded by shelves lined with scrolls and artifacts, her deeply lined face illuminated by the flickering light of a lone oil lamp. Her voice was steady and warm as she began to share stories of the jungle tribe's tales of resistance, betrayal, and resilience that had shaped the Empire's history. "The past is not just a shadow," Sari said. but the soil from which our future blooms. To forget is to lose ourselves. To remember, with care and courage, is to grow strong. Alina listened intently, her heart heavy with the weight of that truth. The Empire's collective memory was fragile, yet powerful, capable of both destruction and renewal. Her own journey, from a cautious botanist to the memory keeper, was a testament to that delicate balance. As night descended, Alina found herself beside a pool of crystal-clear water deep within the jungle. The surface was dotted with petals from the mystical flower she now tended. The stillness of the water mirrored the calm she sought within herself. The whispering breeze stirred the leaves overhead, and distant calls of night creatures echoed softly. In this quiet moment, she felt the full responsibility of her role settle upon her shoulders, not as a burden, but as a sacred trust. Her mind drifted to the challenges ahead. Political factions would not easily relinquish their grip on power, and the temptation to exploit memory magic lingered like a shadow at the edge of the Empire. Yet Alina's resolve was unwavering. She would protect the memories, both the beautiful and the painful, ensuring they were honored and shared with empathy. To remember is to live, she whispered to the night, and to live is to carry the petals of the past into the light of tomorrow. The path before her was uncertain, fraught with danger and discovery. But Alina, the memory keeper, was ready to guide the jungle empire through the tangled vines of history toward a future where memory and life flourished together in harmony. Her story was just beginning, and with each breath, the petals of the forgotten bloomed anew. The sun rose again over the jungle canopy, casting long shadows that danced with the morning breeze. Inside the village's council chamber, a space alive with the scent of earth and ink, Alina sat at a carved wooden table surrounded by her closest allies. Scrolls and botanical samples were spread before them, evidence of the fusion of science and spirit she now embodied. "We must educate," Alina said firmly, "not just the scholars and traders, but every soul in the Empire needs to understand the true nature of memory. It is not a commodity to be bought or sold, but a living thread that binds us all." Morrow leaned forward, his eyes sharp and steady. "The markets will resist. Traders like Doran won't give up so easily. We need a strategy that balances openness with protection." Ellis's voice was calm yet impassioned, "And the dreamscape can be our guide. Through it, we can reach those who are lost, those who fear the past. We can heal the wounds buried deep within the collective unconscious." Sori nodded in agreement. "The elders will support this. The tribes remember more than most. They will be the foundation of this new understanding." Alina felt a swell of hope as the group's vision took shape, a tapestry woven from knowledge, empathy, and courage. This was no longer her burden alone, but a mission shared by those who believed in a future shaped by the truth of memory. Yet even as plans unfurled, shadows lingered at the edges. Whispers of dissent stirred in the undercurrents of the Empire's politics, and the delicate balance she sought to create was fragile as a petal in a storm. But Alina was ready. With the flower's magic blooming within her and the steadfast support of her friends, she would face whatever came with the quiet strength of a keeper who knew that memory, like a garden, required both tending and protection. And so, with the jungle alive around her and the past whispering in every leaf and petal, Alina stepped forward into her destiny, the memory keeper of an empire reborn. The night deepened, and Alina returned once more to the pool where the flower's petals floated silently. She closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of the Empire's memories flowing through her veins. In that stillness, she found peace, not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of acceptance and renewal. For the journey was far from over. But now, armed with knowledge, compassion, and the sacred trust of memory. Alina was ready to lead the jungle empire into a dawn where past and present blossomed together in endless harmony. And as the first stars blinked awake in the velvet sky, a single petal drifted upon the water, radiant a promise of what was and what could be. The memory keeper had arrived. Alina sat cross-legged on the mossy ground, the rare flower cradled gently in her hands, its delicate petals shimmering faintly in the fading light. Around her, Morrow and Ellis settled into a loose circle, the three forming a quiet sanctuary amid the wild, unpredictable heart of the empire. Morrow's sun-tanned skin glowed faintly under the bioluminescent flowers that clung to the twisting branches overhead. His carved wooden talisman rested heavy in his palm, a grounding presence against the swirling uncertainty that had become their world. Across from him, Ellis seemed almost ethereal, her pale skin reflecting the soft light, her silver vine hair cascading like threads of moonlight, petals woven into her cloak, rustling with each subtle movement. Alina inhaled deeply, the scent of damp earth and blooming flora mingling with the faint, lingering essence of the tyrant king's memories locked within the flower. It was a scent both intoxicating and unsettling, a reminder of the delicate balance they had to maintain between power and compassion. "We've come far," Morrow murmured, breaking the comfortable silence. His voice was low but steady, a warm rumble that anchored the moment. "But the path ahead is fraught with shadows. The memory market hasn't forgotten, and neither have those who would see the flower used for their own ends." Alina nodded, her green eyes reflecting the flickering light of the glowing blossoms. "I feel it too. The weight of what this flower carries, and what it means for the empire." Ellis's gaze was distant, thoughtful. "Memory is not just a weapon or a currency," she said softly. "It is the thread that weaves us together, that binds past and present. We must protect that thread, but also honor its fragility." A gentle breeze stirred the petals surrounding them, and Ellis reached forward, her fingers brushing a silver vine crown she had crafted earlier. With reverence, she placed it upon Alina's dark braided hair. The crown shimmered softly, entwined with delicate blooms that pulsed faintly with life. "This is more than a symbol," Ellis whispered. "It is an acceptance of your role, not just as a botanist or a keeper of memories, but as a guardian of the Empire's soul." Morrow's eyes met Alina's, a fierce protectiveness shining through his steady gaze. "You won't face this alone. We stand with you." The warmth of their shared commitment settled like a bomb over the unease that had shadowed Alina's heart. She allowed herself a rare smile, the kind that reached her eyes and softened the lines of worry. But as the night deepened, a distant rumble echoed from the memory market, below a stark reminder that peace was fragile and threats were never far. The sound was a low, ominous growl beneath the symphony of the jungle, and it drew a shadow over their sanctuary. Alina's fingers tightened around the flower. "We have work to do. The Empire needs more than guardians, it needs hope." Ellis rose gracefully, petals cascading like a living cloak, and Morrow followed, talisman in hand. Together, they stepped into the shadows, their silhouettes framed by the pulsating glow of the blossoming petals that seemed to breathe with life itself. The jungle whispered round them, alive with secrets and promises. The journey was far from over, but in this moment, united in purpose and bound by empathy, they were ready to face whatever storms awaited. The petals held their promises, and so did they. As they moved forward into the night, the flower's glow brightened, a beacon of fragile hope amid the encroaching darkness, and with it, the fragile promise of renewal whispered on the wind, waiting to blossom. The night was thick with the scents of rain-washed leaves and the faint hum of distant memory traders moving through the jungle paths below. Alina's footsteps were soft on the moss, her senses alert yet calm. Beside her, Morrow's steady presence was a comforting weight, while Ellis's quiet grace wove a protective aura around them. In the days to come, their bond would be tested by betrayal, by the ruthless ambitions of those who coveted the flower, and by the ever-present pull of King Velen's soul within the petals. But tonight, under the watchful eyes of the jungle's ancient spirits, there was only trust and the unspoken promise to protect the fragile thread that held their world together. And as the first stars pierced the canopy, Alina allowed herself to hope not for power, but for healing, for the petals of the forgotten king to bloom into something new, something better. The journey was far from over, but the seeds of promise had been sown. What would grow from them, only time and courage would tell. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, Alina paused at the edge of the clearing. The flower in her hands pulsed faintly, alive with memories and magic, an eternal testament to the Empire's complex past. She inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of her new role settle firmly within her. The road ahead was uncertain, but with Morrow and Ellis by her side, she was no longer alone. Together, they would face the unfolding chapters of memory and power, petal by petal, promise by promise. And the jungle waited, holding its breath for the story yet to bloom. Around her, the gathered crowd stirred quietly, a mosaic of faces young and old. Warrior and scholar, trader and dreamwalker reach, carrying the weight of a history long buried beneath layers of silence. In her hands, the flower pulsed softly, its petals unfurling with a gentle luminescence that seemed to breathe with the heartbeat of the jungle itself. For years, memories had been the Empire's most precious currency, traded like gold in shadowy markets, whispered in secret, and locked away in the minds of those too afraid to face the past. Yet today marked a turning point. Under Alina's guidance, the once forgotten Tyrant King's soul, entwined within the flower's fragile form, had become a catalyst for transformation, a bridge between the Empire's fractured history and its uncertain future. The ceremony began with a low hum, rising from the assembled crowd like the subtle rustling of leaves, a sound both ancient and alive. Alina's voice, steady but soft, wove through the air as she recited the invocation taught to her by Sori, the village elder. We remember not to bind ourselves to pain, but to honor the roots from which we grow. Around her, petals from the flower scattered, drifting on the breeze like whispered secrets. The scent of blooming orchids and damp earth wrapped the clearing in a cloak of familiarity and mystery. As the chants swelled, the crowd's faces transformed. Some closed their eyes, surrendering to memories long denied. Others watched with wide, cautious eyes, unsure of what the future held. Nearby, Morrow stood vigilant, his carved wooden talisman clenched tightly in his hand. The memory markets had buzzed with rumors of unrest, factions wary of this public acknowledgement of the Empire's dark past. Yet, amidst the tension, he felt a flicker of something new hope. The market's once secretive whispers were giving way to open conversations, and the fragile social balance was beginning to shift. After the ceremony, Alina retreated with Ellis into the quiet sanctuary of the dreamscape. Here, the world bent and shifted beneath their feet, petals swirling in iridescent currents, carrying voices of the past. Ellis's pale fingers traced patterns in the air as she spoke softly. The colors change, Alina. The reds of suffering soften into pinks of forgiveness. This is the path we must walk, delicate and uncertain. Alina nodded, feeling the weight of the tyrant's memories mingle with her own. The dreamscape was a mirror reflecting not only the Empire's history but the fragile threads of her identity. Each step forward was both a revelation and a challenge. Back in the waking world, Sori gathered villagers around flickering fires beneath a twilight sky. Her voice, rich and steady, carried the ancient songs of the jungle tribe's melodies, steeped in sorrow and resilience. Faces painted with symbols of loss and rebirth glowed in the firelight, united in a shared reckoning. "Our stories are not shackles," Sori intoned, "but seeds for the future." Despite the ceremony's success, resistance simmered beneath the surface. Some feared that reopening old wounds would fracture the Empire anew. Others worried the flower's power might be too great to wield responsibly. Alina understood the delicate balance she must maintain between remembering and forgetting, between destruction and renewal. As night deepened, Alina stood once more beneath the vast canopy, the flower's gentle glow a beacon in the darkness. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and promise. Yet, within the echoes of the past and the blossoms of change, she found a quiet strength, determination to guide her people through the tangled vines of memory toward a future where pain could coexist with hope. The jungle whispered its ancient secrets, and Alina listened, ready to carry them forward. The days that followed saw a ripple of change spread through the Empire. Markets that once thrummed with covert exchanges of memories now hosted open dialogues where elders and youth shared recollections, and storytellers wove the tyrant's legacy into the tapestry of collective consciousness. Alina and her allies, Morrow and Ellis, moved cautiously through this shifting landscape, aware that every step forward invited new challenges. Morrow's presence was a grounding force amid the swirling tides of transformation. His pragmatic wisdom tempered Alina's idealism, reminding her of the human cost embedded in the memory trade. "Change is never without sacrifice," he said one evening, as they watched the sun dip behind the jungle canopy. "We must be ready to protect those caught in the crossfire." Ellis, ever the enigma, guided Alina deeper into the mysteries of floral magic and dreamwalking. Together, they explored ways to weave memories into living forms, flowers that bore the essence of history, petals that whispered forgotten truths. These botanical marvels became symbols of reconciliation, tangible reminders that the past could be preserved without domination. Yet, old fears lingered. Some factions sought to seize the flower's power for control, others to erase the tyrant's shadow altogether. Alina felt the subtle pull of these forces, the fragile peace threatened by those unwilling to embrace the full complexity of memory. In a quiet moment, Sori approached Alina beneath the stars, her voice low and resolute. "Your path is not easy, child, but the jungle teaches us strength grows in the soil of pain." Alina met her gaze, feeling the enormity of her role as guardian of memory and life. The echoes and blossoms of the Empire's past called to her, urging her to nurture the fragile shoots of hope. As dawn broke over the jungle, Alina inhaled the rich scent of earth and petals. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in generations, it was hers to shape, and the flower in her hands gleamed with the promise of a new beginning. But as the sun rose higher, a shadow flickered at the edge of the clearing, a reminder that the past never truly fades, and the dance between memory and oblivion was far from over. Alina's journey was only just beginning. Alina Tar stood silently amidst the thriving blooms, her breath slow and steady as she inhaled the heady scent of jasmine and wild orchids. Each petal seemed to shimmer with a delicate dew, as if the garden itself was breathing alongside her. It was here, in this fragile sanctuary, that she found the peace she had long sought, the space to reconcile the shadows of the past with the fragile promise of the future. Her fingers brushed gently over a cluster of vibrant petals, their colors a tapestry of reds and purples, blues and golds each flower, a testament to the complex memory woven into their roots. The garden was no ordinary place. It was a living archive, a song of history and hope intertwined, tended by Alina and the allies who had become her family. Morrow's steady hands had helped shape these beds, his laughter often echoing amid the leaves, a balm to the wounds left by years of conflict and loss. She turned as Morrow approached, his familiar presence grounding her. His sun-tanned skin glowed faintly in the morning light, eyes steady and warm beneath his furrowed brow. "The blooms are thriving," he said, voice low yet filled with quiet pride. "They're as resilient as we are." Alina smiled, the corners of her mouth softening. "Resilience is a song we've learned to sing together." Together, they moved through the garden, sharing stories of the struggles and small victories that had marked their journey. Morrow spoke of his family, the dangers memory traders still posed, and the fragile peace they now cherished. Alina listened intently, her heart swelling with gratitude for the steadfast friendship that had carried her through the darkest nights. As they worked, a gentle shimmer caught her eye. Elis emerged from the shadows, her pale form cloaked in petals that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly light. Her silver hair flowed like vines in a breeze that only she could feel, and her eyes held the depth of countless dreamscapes. Without a word, Elis began to sing a haunting melody weaving through the garden like a soft wind, coaxing flowers to open their hearts fully to the sun. The garden responded in kind, petals unfurling in a radiant display of color and light, as if the song itself was a spell of renewal. Alina closed her eyes, allowing the magic to wash over her, bridging the realms of spirit and nature. It was in this moment she understood the true power of memory, not as a chain to bind or a weapon to wield, but as a garden to nurture, where pain and beauty could coexist and grow. As twilight descended, painting the sky in hues of lavender and rose, Alina found herself drawn to the glowing flower that had once harbored the soul of the tyrant king, Velen. No longer a symbol of fear and domination, it now stood as a beacon of reconciliation, reminder that even the darkest histories could yield seeds of hope. The night creatures began their gentle chorus, and Alina felt the weight of the past settle into a peaceful quiet within her. She knew the path ahead would not be without challenges, that the delicate balance she had embraced must be guarded with vigilance and love. Yet, in her heart, a quiet determination took root. The garden was singing its song, and Alina was ready to carry its melody forward, tending the fragile blooms of memory and life, weaving a future where the Empire could remember without fear and dream without losing itself. "We are the guardians now," she whispered to the night, her voice steady and sure, "and this garden is our song." As the stars began to glimmer above the jungle canopy, Alina stood tall, a solitary figure silhouetted against the vast sky. The past and present intertwined within her, a living testament to the power of memory and the promise of renewal. The journey from dread to hope was not a simple one, but it was hers to walk, and she would do so with courage, compassion, and an unyielding belief in the garden's song. The night deepened, and with it, the quiet hum of life pulsed stronger in the heart of the jungle empire. Alina's story was far from over, but the seeds of a new beginning had been sown, ready to bloom in the days to come. And somewhere, in the whispering leaves and the soft petals, the Empire listened, ready to remember, ready to heal, ready to be whole. Alina Tar stood at the edge of a small clearing, her fingers stained with the vibrant hues of crushed petals. The rare flower she had nurtured, the one harboring the soul of King Velen, had blossomed anew, its magic pulsing faintly beneath her touch. Around her, the hum of the jungle wove a steady rhythm, a gentle reminder of the life that thrived amid ancient secrets. Today was different. The air held a charged expectancy, as if the very plants themselves were aware of the shift about to take place. Alina's heart beat steadily, her breath calm but purposeful. Beside her, Elis knelt, her pale hands weaving intricate patterns in the air, petals falling like soft rain around them. The Dreamwalker's silver-vined hair caught the morning light, shimmering with an ethereal glow. "Are you ready?" Elis's voice was a whisper, yet carried the weight of centuries of memory guardianship. Alina nodded, her green eyes reflecting both the verdant jungle and the flickering light of the small brazier between them. "I am." For weeks, Alina had toiled in the Empire's archives and her laboratory, blending botanical expertise with the esoteric knowledge imparted by Elis. The flower's power was unlike anything she had encountered, a living repository of memories that defied simple explanation. It was as if the petals themselves breathed with stories, each fold a fragment of history suspended in time. The concoction they prepared was delicate. Crushed petals of the mystical flower mixed with ancient herbal extracts, bound by whispered incantations that Elis murmured with reverence. As Alina stirred the mixture, it began to glow softly, emitting a gentle light that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "This is it," Elis said, her voice steady despite the wonder in her eyes. "A vessel not just for memory, but for life itself." Alina carefully poured the mixture over the soil at the center of the clearing. The earth drank eagerly, and within moments, a sprout emerged, delicate and trembling. The leaves unfurled slowly, shimmering with an inner light that seemed to pulse with each breath of the jungle. "Look," Alina whispered, stepping closer as the flower began to bloom, petals opening like soft flames of light. Within them flickered scenes, visions of ancient ceremonies, whispered prayers, and the faces of those long gone. The memories were tangible now, woven into the living fabric of the plant. Morrow appeared at the edge of the clearing, his stocky frame silhouetted against the rising sun. His sun-tanned skin was streaked with sweat, and his eyes bore the weight of countless battles fought in the shadows of memory markets. Yet today, there was a softness in his gaze, a fragile hope. "Alina," he said, stepping forward cautiously, "this power, it could change everything, but it could also bring new dangers." She met his gaze, steady and resolute. "I know, but this is a chance to heal, not to harm. To preserve history without destroying those who live it." He nodded slowly, placing a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Then I stand with you." Together, they watched as the first flower of living memory pulsed gently, each petal a testament to a story reclaimed from the shadows. Elis began to chant softly, her voice weaving through the jungle like a lullaby, binding the magic of the flower with the spirit of the Empire. Days turned into weeks as Alina and her companions nurtured a garden of these luminous blooms. Each flower held a different memory, a festival long forgotten, the laughter of children from a distant village, the solemn oath of a chieftain. Visitors came cautiously at first, eyes wide with disbelief and awe. The memory vessels did more than preserve, they invited reflection. People lingered in the garden, touched petals, and felt the echo of lives once erased by fear and forgetting. The Empire's collective amnesia began to unravel, replaced by a tapestry of remembrance woven in light and life. But progress was never without resistance. Factions within the Empire viewed the living memories as threats to their power tools that could undermine control and rewrite history on their terms. Whispers of sabotage and espionage rippled through the jungle like a gathering storm. One evening, as the sky blushed with twilight, Alina wandered alone among the glowing petals. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and earth, the flowers whispering softly in a language older than words. She reached out to touch a bloom that shimmered with the image of a young Velen, his face a mixture of hope and shadowed regret. "What do you see?" Elisa's voice startled her from behind. Alina smiled faintly. Not just a tyrant. A man who dreamed of unity, who faltered beneath his own ambition. Ellis nodded. Understanding is the first step toward redemption. Morrow joined them, his gaze sweeping over the garden. The Empire will need time, but this could be the seed of a new era. As night deepened, the garden pulsed with a gentle light, a beacon in the dark jungle. Alina felt a quiet strength settle within her. Promise that memory, like the petals, could open to reveal not just pain, but the possibility of healing. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and doubt. Yet beneath the canopy of stars, surrounded by blooms that sang with the voices of the past, Alina knew that the petals of light would guide them toward a future where history was not a chain, but a bridge. And as the first night flowers opened, their luminescent petals casting soft shadows on the earth, Alina whispered a vow to the jungle and its people to guard these memories, to honor their stories, and to nurture the fragile bloom of hope that promised renewal. The Empire was awakening, one petal at a time. Soft petals brushed against her skin, each one a whisper of the countless lives woven into the jungle empire's history. At the heart of this luminous expanse stood the flower, the last bloom, its petals unfurling slowly, revealing the radiant core within. But it was not just any flower. It was the prison and the vessel of King Valon's soul, the forgotten tyrant whose shadow had haunted her every step. As Alina approached, the air thickened with a charged silence, and the spectral figure of Velen emerged from the swirling petals and shadows. His form was regal yet fractured, a mosaic of light and darkness, eyes piercing yet haunted. "You have come far, Alina Tar," his voice echoed, simultaneously commanding and fragile. "Do you seek to end me, or to understand?" Alina's heart pounded, the weight of their shared history pressing upon her. She remembered the cruelty, the fear, the violence that had once gripped the Empire under his reign. Yet beneath that terror, she sensed something else, a yearning, a regret buried deep within the tyrant's fractured soul. "I seek neither destruction nor domination," she said steadily, her voice carrying the strength born of countless trials. "I seek peace for you, for me, and for the Empire." Velen's form flickered, petals trembling as if stirred by a gentle breeze. Peace. After all that has been done. Before Alina could answer, figures materialized beside her Ellis, pale and ethereal, her silver-vined hair shimmering with soft light, and Morrow, steadfast and grounded, his carved talisman glowing faintly. Their presence steadied Alina's resolve, a reminder that she was not alone in this final reckoning. Drawing on the lessons learned through months of journeying the dreamscape, Alina reached out to the flower. She summoned the floral magic Ellis had taught her, weaving strands of luminescent light and vibrant life energy around the petals. The flower responded, pulsing warmly, a heartbeat syncing with her own. "You carry the weight of history," Alina whispered, "but history need not be a chain. It can be a root from which new life grows." Velen's eyes softened, the shadows around him dissolving into bursts of iridescent colors. The flowers' petals glowed brighter, unfolding fully to bathe the dreamscape in radiant light. The tyrant's spirit seemed to exhale a long-held breath, the burdens of centuries lifting as he dissolved into a cascade of shimmering blossoms. In that moment, Alina felt a profound release, not just of Velen's soul, but of the Empire's collective pain. The cycle of forgetting and suffering began to shift, replaced by a fragile hope that memory could be both a lesson and a gift. As the last bloom settled into tranquility, Alina turned to Ellis and Morrow, their faces alight with shared understanding. The journey was far from over, but the path forward was now illuminated by forgiveness and renewal. Together, they stepped back toward the waking world, carrying the transformed flower, the symbol of an empire ready to heal. But as the dreamscape's light faded behind her, Alina knew one truth remained. Memory was not just about what was lost or forgotten, but about what was chosen to be remembered and how that choice could shape the future. And with that thought, a new chapter began. Around her, flowers bloomed with an otherworldly glow, petals infused with the delicate shimmer of memories. No longer burdens to be feared, but gifts to be cherished. The air was rich with the scent of wet earth and fresh rain, mingled with the soft fragrance of the blooming petals that whispered stories long silenced. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the faint murmur of voices, echoes of past joys, regrets, and hopes that wove through the rustling leaves like a living melody. Alina's green eyes, reflecting the jungle's depth, rested on the flower at the center of the garden, the very flower that once held the soul of the forgotten tyrant king, Velen. Now, it stood as a symbol transformed, its petals no longer shackled by cruelty or domination, but open in a gesture of reconciliation and renewal. The journey to this moment had been long and fraught, shaped by dreams that blurred past and present, by betrayals that tested her resolve, and by friendships that anchored her through storms of doubt. Morrow approached, his steady presence a comforting contrast to the swirling thoughts within her mind. His sun-tanned skin glistened faintly in the fading light, and the carved wooden talisman hung from his neck seemed to pulse with quiet strength. The market today was different, he said, his voice low but warm. People trade with less greed, more respect. Your work is changing things. Alina, she nodded, a small smile touching her lips. It's only the beginning, but the balance is delicate. Memories can heal or harm, and we must tread carefully. Together, they walked toward the memory marketer, bustling place that once thrummed with the sharp edge of desire and fear, now softened by a cautious optimism. Traders exchanged memories with reverence, their eyes meeting across stands with a newfound understanding. The price was no longer measured solely in power or profit, but in shared stories and lessons that bound the community tighter. Alina observed quietly, feeling the pulse of change, the slow but steady shift toward a society that embraced its history instead of denying it. That night, under the shimmering stars and the watchful gaze of the jungle, Alina met with Ellis in the dreamscaper realm where memories took form and danced in light and shadow. The dreamscape was awash with glowing petals, each a window into a fragment of the Empire's collective soul. Ellis's pale figure moved gracefully among them, her silver, vine-like hair trailing like moonlight woven into silk. "Look," Ellis whispered, guiding Alina's gaze to the tapestry of memories unfurling before them. It was a living mural, joy intertwined with sorrow, cruelty balanced by compassion, each thread breathing with life and history. This is the power we hold, the ability to face the past, to understand it, and to grow beyond it. Alina reached out, her fingers brushing a petal that shimmered with a child's laughter and a mother's gentle touch. "It's beautiful, fragile, but alive, and it must be protected," Ellis replied, eyes shining with quiet fervor. "Not just by you, but by everyone who calls this empire home. As dawn approached, the community gathered in the garden where the flower stood at the altar, surrounded by entwined jungle vines and softly glowing lanterns. Faces of all ages and backgrounds reflected a shared commitment to remembrance and healing. Alina stepped forward, her heart steady despite the weight of expectation. She spoke softly but with unwavering conviction. This flower, once a vessel of tyranny and pain, now blooms with the light of our collective memory. It reminds us that our past, with all its shadows and light, shapes who we are, but it does not define who we must become. We are the guardians of our history, the keepers of memory and life. Together, we will honor what was and nurture what can be. A hush fell, the jungle itself seeming to breathe in her words. Then, slowly, hands reached out to touch the petals, to feel the pulse of history woven into living matter. The flower's gentle glow spread, illuminating faces lifted in hope and determination. In that moment, Alina felt her transformation complete, not just as a botanist or a dreamwalker, but as a mediator between past and present, a protector of memory. The empire, too, was awakening, ready to embrace a future where remembering and forgetting danced in harmony, where scars became stories of survival, and where the bloom of hope pushed through the darkest soil. Yet, even as the night gave way to day, Alina knew her journey was far from over. The balance she sought was fragile, and the forces that coveted the power of memory still lingered in shadows. But armed with knowledge, empathy, and the resilient spirit of the jungle, she was ready to face whatever came, a guardian of the petals that held the soul of a people. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the canopy, the flower unfurled one last time, releasing a soft, warm light that spread through the garden like a promise that the past would live, not as a chain, but as a seed for a new beginning. And so, beneath the watchful eyes of the ancient trees, the jungle empire stepped into a dawn where memory and life blossomed together, forever intertwined.